All politics is identity politics.
Welcome to Identity Politics, everyone. I'm DeAnna. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to do one long thing on one big topic, but I think it's the most important one out there. Up until 2015, free speech was taken for granted absolutely online. It's just how it was. You younger guys don't even know. It was as close to a universal value as existed in the United States of America. No one disagreed with it. And now, basically a decade later, it's a far-right trope. You're a Nazi if you believe in free speech. It's gone throughout most of the world. And I think this is the most important cultural change of my lifetime. Not troons, not wokeness, not even really cell phones or social media. Those have been around for a while. The way people consume this stuff is different, but it's not that different. It's not even AI. It's not any of this. It's the idea that everyone is their own commissar and everyone is their neighbor's commissar. And political victory is determined by silencing opponents. This is new in this country. Because you used to always hear, I don't agree with what this guy says, but he has the right to say it. That is not a thing anymore. There are entire concepts and emerging legal doctrines coming out of the courts that are rendering the First Amendment practically irrelevant. And online, the internet is closed. But before we get into that, we should ask, how did we get here? Because this by itself is an interesting discussion. Things don't just happen. People don't spontaneously decide to do things. Public opinion is dictated. It's dictated from the top down. And usually it's kind of an invisible process. That's what makes it effective. You don't really see it happening. I don't think someone like Noam Chomsky was fundamentally wrong when he talked about manufacturing consent. Like, it doesn't just happen. There are limits to discourse, and then you have passionate debate within those extremely narrow limits. And that's about how they control public opinion, right? Like, we all see that. It's just when you look at a guy like Chomsky and all these left-wing media critics, they always ignore and probably support all the times it worked for the benefit of the positions that he believes in, especially when it comes to ideas surrounding race. And of course, his contention that the major corporations, the capitalists, they would never support these progressive issues. Well, Amazon, Coca-Cola, corporate America gave millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter. I promise you, American Renaissance is not getting a donation from Coca-Cola anytime soon. I consider it a miracle if I'm allowed to use PayPal. That's the reality of the whole situation. From Noam Chomsky to Naomi Klein to Richard Wolff or whoever else, none of these Marxists have ever experienced real opposition in their entire lives. None of them have ever been anything other than a little mascot for the system they claim to oppose. And a lot of times the mechanisms of their theories are interesting. I think like the means that they go into, it's worth studying, but they identify the wrong targets because they're part of the class that's actually in power. And let's be honest, they're also part of the ethnic group that is privileged and dictates terms. They're not marginalized, but that's how it works. Power is best exercised when you claim you're not in power. And that was how we lost free speech online. It wasn't done in the name of national security. Not really. During the George W. Bush era, during the war on terrorism, there were all sorts of excitable claims about how Christian fascists under Bush were going to destroy the First Amendment forever. Bush, of course, was too busy praising Islam to do anything like that. There was no cost. There was no cost even after 9/11. There was no cost to go after the White House or the wars or whatever else. People made careers out of this kind of cringe dissent. And why? Because people are trained against that. If the government says you can't say this in the name of national security or national unity or whatever else, you know to react against that. You've got 60 years of movies and TV shows and narratives you get from your textbooks and whatever else that's going to tell you that's fascism. That's what we have to be on guard about. It's McCarthyism all over again. Didn't you have to read The Crucible in school? Like, it's all the same thing. But what if somebody's doing something not in the name of protecting the nation by curbing dissent, but we're banning free speech in the name of protecting dissent somehow? How are we doing that? We're using the state to protect marginalized groups. We're giving power to the central government, but we're doing it to combat authoritarianism. We're protecting democracy. How? Well, we don't want people to see information they don't know how to interpret. Tech companies are being told to ban specific people. Why are you doing that? Well, it's in the name of transparency. That's how it's done. And that's harder to fight. People don't see that. I mean, to say something in liberalism's defense, it's pretty good at getting people riled up to fight something like a military dictator or a king, a direct foreign invasion. Like, even the shitlibs will go Red Dawn with that. But if it's couched in effeminate, pleading language, oh no, we're so weak. I can't do anything. Like that works, right? People have no defenses to that. Palpatine begging Anakin Skywalker, no, I'm too weak. Like it worked for him, it works for them. And it was after the war on terrorism, it was after Christo-fascism, after all the stuff we were told to be afraid of, that was when we lost free speech. Within the span of just a couple years, you went from being able to buy anything you wanted on something like Amazon without it being even a thing to it just being impossible. I mean, let's give one example. I know one talking point that infuriates all of us is this idea of banned books, right? There was just another one of these posts on X. It's not worth getting into because you see it every week. Read banned books. Oh, I'm so brave. And then you look at what they have for banned books, and it's a bunch of books that you read in school. Or even better, it's books that they have a giant display for at bookstores, something like this. Like, oh, Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. The fascists don't want you to read The Handmaid's Tale. Like, this is everywhere. In reality, there are actually banned books. Books you can no longer find, even on things like Amazon. I'll give you an example. Take something like The Great Betrayal. These are the memoirs of Ian Smith, Prime Minister of Rhodesia. Not going to find that on Amazon. Cost used at least $150. And that's from a former world leader about a topic of great historical interest, even to mainstream people. Like, we're not talking about Harold Covington here, which you also used to be able to buy from Amazon without anybody caring. Like it sounds funny now that you could just get anything then, and that's how I got most of mine, but that's not the point. It sounds absurd now, but that was just normal. And it wasn't edgy, you weren't trying to be contrarian or any of this kind of stuff. You would just get whatever you wanted. Any liberal, especially liberals back then, even 15 years ago, would say, yes, of course we believe in free speech. What? You want the corporations deciding what books you can and cannot read? You want the government deciding? That's slavery. That's insane. Nobody would put up with that. 10 years later, these are the very people arguing for it. And to break it down, to quote a man of the left, who I think, believe it or not, sincerely held this position, who knows what would have happened if he lived longer, Christopher Hitchens famously argued, look, is there someone whom you would assign the responsibility of deciding for you what books you are allowed to read, what ideas you are allowed to consider, what you are allowed to see? No one? Okay then, to hell with this. But forget principles. Politics is about power. And everybody supports free speech for themselves. No one really supports free speech for existential enemies. And maybe what really changed in the 2010s is we stopped being a nation. We stopped being a nation where we just kind of disagreed about stuff, even violently sometimes, but we were more or less one people. We just disagreed on what we're supposed to do. But now we're a kind of ethnic chaos of warring tribes. And there's no communication possible. It's just identity politics all the way down. It's just existential interests. It's just my gain is their loss and vice versa. So what is there to talk about? So now what's government's job? It's just to shut people up, to try to keep the peace, to keep this like cold civil war that's always like simmering under the surface in check. And now all the different groups try to secure as much power over the whole process as possible by censoring their enemies. This is where we're at. There's not even a we anymore. But let's get into the specifics. Like, am I right about this? That it's downstream from just demographics? Well, it's a bit more complicated in some ways. There's this remarkable article out there on Substack. I encourage you all to read it and support the author. He goes by Arctotherium. He's also on X. The article is entitled "The Closure of the Internet, the Most Important Social Phenomenon of the 2010s." And he begins, quote, "Until 2015, an optimistic and liberal, in the best sense, ethos pervaded the internet. Major internet platforms were open and had little content policy beyond bans on real-life criminal activity, stalking, selling illegal goods, child pornography, etc. Aside from these narrow and reasonable explicit exceptions, anyone could go online and converse with interested people around the world about whatever they wanted in public. These platforms had no real means to control what people talked about on them, even if they wanted to, which they didn't. To the extent an organization can have views, all believed in free and open online discourse, which promised to make censorship impossible and end the hegemony of 20th century broadcast media. In this, they were backed up by major non-tech institutions such as the UN, the EU, the US State Department, and the New York Times, all of which saw internet freedom as a corollary of offline freedom, and one which would liberalize the world's remaining non-democratic states in time. These institutions both supported internet freedom rhetorically and spent hundreds of millions of dollars creating and disseminating technical tools to evade internet censorship and preserve online anonymity." Think of how crazy that is by today's standards. Think of the last time the New York Times argued for free speech, that the UN argued for free speech, that the EU argued for free speech. All of these groups, to some extent or another, oppose it today. The State Department is probably the least guilty, and that's only a change with the new administration. And even there are a couple exceptions. Now, as the author here points out, every single major platform within just a couple years had created ideological content rules. They were all completely vague. They all had a huge censorship apparatus. They were all justified in the name of these Russian influence campaigns, which were mostly overblown, and in my opinion, mostly just invented as a way to discredit the 2016 election, or more importantly, to fight hate and misinformation. Well, what do those words mean? It means whatever people want it to mean. You can censor anything with that. Let me give you one example. The original Twitter rules, this was 2009 to like 2015. It was not that long ago. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but these were the topics. Impersonation, you can't do that. Privacy, you can't post somebody's like street address. Violence and threats, you can't say I'm going to kill you. Copyrighted material, unlawful use, serial accounts, name squatting, malware and phishing, spam, pornography. Pretty reasonable. You know what words weren't even mentioned? They didn't even come up. Hate, racism, sexism, homophobia. This was 2015, and these things weren't even on the radar. That's how quickly it changed. Now, why did it change? Some might say, as he points out in his article, oh, it's specific incidents. So, for example, one of those things we used to take for granted, now just gone, being able to buy Confederate flags or whatever other Confederate memorabilia or shirts or whatever else on Amazon or anywhere else. What happened? You had the Dillon Roof Massacre in Charleston, and all of that was entirely purged overnight. Went from mainstream to verboten, just gone. And incidentally, while we're on the subject of Dillon Roof, I mean, I know it's a sensitive thing to talk about and maybe a little dangerous for somebody in my position, but I can't help but observe. Notice how the expected response to an atrocity changes depending on who did it. I mean, after 9/11, Islam was massively strengthened demographically and politically in American life. President George W. Bush went out of his way to praise it. You had all these events and initiatives everywhere. And we have to make the Muslims feel welcome. We need to do more outreach. We got to make sure they don't feel scapegoated. The way we fight the terrorists is we build a mosque, because that's how we show them how welcoming we are. If you kill your enemy, they win, right? And now this is after every terrorist attack, and God knows we get them often enough. Oh, I'll ride with you. You remember that? That was the offer white liberals made to Muslims after this one attack. Don't look back in anger. We need a unity rally. We're Manchester strong. We're Boston strong. We're whatever stupid town just got blown up by Muslims, and we're just going to pretend it didn't happen. We need to cover up the details of the crime, like they did in France after the Bataclan terrorist attack. No one needs to know this stuff, like what they actually did, mutilating the victims and stuff. Oh, that's evil. We don't want people to get mad. Why? Why do people react this way? Well, we don't want to upset the Muslim moderates. That would lead to more incidents. Plus, isn't it a little unfair to blame an entire group of people for the actions of just one person or a few people? We don't believe in collective punishment. That's not who we are. Then consider what happened in 2015. You stupid hicks, we're going to take down every Confederate flag in the country. We're going to tear down your monuments. We're going to dig up the bodies of people and start moving them around like they did to Nathan Bedford Forrest and General A.P. Hill. We're going to have campaigns to make sure no one's defending Southern heritage. If you do say something, we're going to get you fired. We're going to hunt down every statue in some Southern town you've never heard of. There needs to be a reckoning. Like the entire white South needs to be held to account. There was a group called the Council of Conservative Citizens, quite influential, very powerful in its day. Not that long ago, it would have meetings with politicians, governors, state legislatures, stuff like that, all throughout the South, and people would openly affiliate with it. And their website, the way they would get people to come to the website is they would just post links from other sites with the news of the day, pretty similar to what American Renaissance does. And Dillon Roof looked at that site, and he mentioned that's where he got his news from. Now, he didn't get the news from like a column from that site, but he was getting news from like the New York Times, the Washington Post, because they would be posting the links. But that wasn't enough. The CCC was basically annihilated, like overnight, for posting links from other sites. Now, if that's the standard, no website could possibly survive. And nobody at the time, and nobody since, other than, I guess, me, nobody ever said, hey, what about collective punishment? No academics are being like, well, what were the root causes of this attack? because we can't possibly solve this problem unless we consider it maturely. No, it's just we need to crush these people into the dirt. Because that's what everyone actually wants when it comes to people they don't like. No one actually supports lenient treatment for a group after a terrorist attack or a crime, unless they more or less think that attack was at least a little justified. I mean, not to fall into the oldest conservative cliche in the book, but to fall into the oldest conservative cliche in the book, imagine if the roles were reversed. I mean, there was a Muslim terrorist attack. Okay, we're going to tear down the mosques where the imams say extremist things. You're a Muslim. You need to denounce every single one of these people on this list that I've prepared. We're going to censor you online. We're going to ban you from organizing. We're going to say there's no place for you in a modern society. Like, imagine that was his response. You can't even do it. Or use a more recent example, Audrey Hale, 2023, killed a bunch of school kids. Just as noxious as what Dylan Roof did in terms of this is an attack that sickens you, right? Motivated by the usual trans insanity, anti-white hatred, did people say, we need to ban the transgender flag? Did the Christians whose school was attacked even do anything about this? No. In fact, as we've covered before on this program, insofar as anyone influential expressed real anger, it was anger that the shooter's anti-white manifesto was leaked. Like, that's what people were mad about. We're talking about the murder of children here, and transgender shooters are not exactly rare at this point, especially considering the relatively small share of the population. Why was there not a crackdown on websites and organizations promoting it? Why were their symbols and flags not banned? Why was there not censorship in the name of public safety and preventing hatred? Because the people who matter, not you, not me, they more or less like this ideology. They think it's fine. They want to spread it. And they don't support the crime, of course. And I'm not saying that. But I am saying they don't consider it that big a deal, at least not socially. Like, it's an unfortunate thing. It's an earthquake. Maybe we can ban some guns, but, some white Christian kids getting gunned down, that's not really a moral crusade to get worked up about, at least not to people who matter. That's the reality. I mean, tell me something that people actually get mad about. Tell me what they're willing to use force against. I'll tell you who they really are. Tell me what they're willing to forgive or pray about or have a unity rally over. I'll tell you what they never really cared about in the first place. So when you look at where censorship began, it's not because one incident or another was just so horrible. Dylan Roof, Charlottesville, whatever you want to cite. It wasn't that. There were other things going on. Again, from the article, quote, atrocities without a propaganda campaign from the press and political pressure from an opaque network of governments and quasi-government NGOs lead to no changes. There were no mass purges after Audrey Hale's 2023 murder of elementary schoolers in Nashville motivated by anti-white hatred, or the 2016 murder of 5 Dallas police officers by an ex-Marine motivated by the BLM movement. On the other hand, press campaigns not centered around atrocity, such as the mass deplatformings of YouTube personalities, lead to the same types of purges as the atrocity-based ones. It's not the atrocity that causes the changes, but the media and behind-the-scenes pressure campaign, unquote. And this is critical to understand. And as the author points out, when you look at the 2010s, there were a lot of other things going on. You had physical attacks on guys like Charles Murray, author of Coming Apart in the Bell Curve. You had purges within liberal organizations like the New York Times. You essentially had a wipeout of heterodox thought during this period. We now call it the Great Awakening because it was akin to a religious revival. Now, what caused it? There were a lot of things going on, and Black Lives Matter even began before Trump, but where it really took off was Trump. Because what was the premise before Trump, especially to people in big tech? The internet's going to undermine authoritarian regimes. We reporters don't like authoritarian regimes. We tech workers don't like authoritarian regimes. But if we just spread around everything, if we have free speech, everyone everywhere eventually ends up a liberal Democrat. I mean, Arab Spring and all that nonsense. Look at how they responded to Barack Obama getting elected. How did Barack Obama get elected? Oh, he used the internet. He used social media. He was doing all these things. This is the future. This is the creative class. And then Trump wins. And Trump wins with the internet. I mean, your whole worldview just shatters overnight. I mean, look at this image. This is from the article. It's sourced from a guy named David Rosado. 2016. Boom. Just takes off right there. And those are the mentions of misinformation and disinformation. Goes from nothing to everywhere. This is the birth of an entire industry where you're moderating comments through machines, toxic language detection, as they call it. This whole industry grew up just instantly around this time. Show some other images to show how quickly this happened. Take the idea of hate speech. Now, hate speech is not a thing in American law, but people keep talking about it like it is a thing. And eventually, if they keep talking about it, it will become a thing. Like eventually you will get justices on the Supreme Court who say, yes, this is a thing. But it's only been around very recently. It really only emerged around 2013 when people started talking about it. Really took off around 2016. Same thing with the words platforming or deplatforming. We say this all the time now. This guy gave someone a platform. It's even a verb. Why are you platforming this person? Now, I used to hear this word like 20 years ago, but it was something that only Antifa would say. Now it's mainstream. Why is deplatforming someone good? We can't let them talk and spread their toxic ideas. Speech is violence. Violence is speech. This is the status quo now. I mean, one of the biggest indications of the cultural shift that's taken place is the idea of hosting someone is no longer considered neutral or just expected. 20 years ago, even when it was still pretty liberal, you could host a speaker at your college campus. People wouldn't say, well, obviously you agree with everything this person has to say. 10 years ago, you could have a guest on an internet program. That doesn't mean that the host agrees with his guest on everything. Now the expectation is, look, if you're hosting someone, if you're having a conversation with someone, if you're having a debate with someone, to some extent, you think that their ideas are valid enough to be given a hearing. You probably endorse them. Really, you agree with them. Really, you should be held accountable for that. So when you have a college campus, should they even host a mildly conservative speaker? Well, we can't really do that anymore. It might cause emotional harm. It might cause physical danger to marginalized communities, though as far as I can tell, this has never actually happened. But really, it's because they don't want an institution endorsing these ideas. And they think just hosting the ideas mean that you're endorsing the ideas. I mean, what is the phrase that we always hear when somebody controversial comes to talk? And controversial according to whom? What do these institutions always say? These are not our values. Yeah, they're not. They're not the values of corporate America or universities or the government. Because the values used to be things like openness, freedom of debate, intellectual curiosity. Now the values of any major institution, especially the educational ones, are neuroticism, weakness, and enforced ignorance. Like those are the values. And this includes online now. Now think of what happened to specific platforms. You may be watching this right now on YouTube, and I take for granted, like absolutely, it's not even a question, that at some point it's going to be taken off YouTube. That's just inevitable. YouTube has changed more than maybe any other platform. Many of the people who made the platform, who became popular, PewDiePie, probably the leading example, once the most popular guy on here, he would never get off the ground now. Forget it. He wouldn't have a chance. It's not a site for just user-created content. It's a launching pad for approved corporate products. That's what it is. Demand is created from the top down, but it was not always so. Arctotherium writes, quote, of all the platforms that were closed in this period, the most important was YouTube. YouTube is the most used social media platform in the United States and dominates long-form video. Until 2017, YouTube allowed for easy monetization. Any channel could get a cut of ad revenue with minimal requirements, and the sheer scale of YouTube made YouTube content creator a viable career path, independent of major institutions if you were engaging, disciplined, and productive enough. There were almost no barriers to entry, and the YouTube algorithm was content neutral. You remember that? If YouTube's recommendation algorithm predicted a video would appeal to viewers, it would be shown. What changed this was a combined media and political campaign originating in Great Britain. In March 2017, the Times of London and The Guardian published articles juxtaposing racist videos, often cherry-picked videos with very few views, with advertisements on YouTube. The nominally conservative British government, of course, promptly boycotted advertising on YouTube on March 16th, a boycott later joined by many British corporations, and summoned Google to explain. Non-compliance could reasonably have been expected to lead to government retaliation, yet this was clearly a pretext. No one who uses social media believes that an ad appearing next to a piece of user-generated content implies the owner of the ad endorses the content. And until the news articles were published, there were no major consumer complaints about this. However, the fiction that consumers were outraged at companies whose ads appeared for 5 seconds before a racist video provided a shelling point for people who already wanted to censor YouTube to coordinate to purge the site. The implied threat worked. Unquote. And as he points out, YouTube then joined with dozens of NGOs, including the Anti-Defamation League, the No Hate Speech Movement, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, to identify specific videos and get them taken down. And this is every media article now, right? Like journalists make their careers on this. You've seen these articles a million times. Meet the racist content creator who's making the money spreading hate. Why don't we shut them down? How many stories have you seen like that? Here's a guy who's doing something interesting. How do we force someone with power to shut him up? That's what journalists do. As the article points out, by 2019, you had the gutting of this entire, not even right wing, but this kind of centrist, anti-woke ecosystem on YouTube. I mean, you know the kind of guys we're talking about. That was basically gone. I mean, the kind of Gamergate thing that really drove that was just had the heart ripped out of it. And so a lot of people who stayed in it, what did they do? They shift left for economic reasons. They want to stay on the platform. But also, not surprisingly, that's when BreadTube, which is to say the communists, started really gaining traction because those people never get censored. I'll say this, if those people ever nationalize Google, they have it coming. They brought it on themselves. I mean, consider another one. Consider another platform. Again, the idea that it didn't used to be this way is baffling now, but it really didn't. Consider Reddit. I mean, the very word Reddit is a punchline, right? But Reddit's very ominous because when you talk about AI, what it's being trained on, a lot of it is Reddit. You ask AI a question, it's going to spit back, this is what I saw on Reddit. Well, okay, what's on Reddit? Believe it or not, until 2015, that used to be a place where you could discuss ideas. There was no content policy whatsoever. Besides no doxing, no illegal activity, no organizing harassment offline, very sensible, reasonable, restricted things. But then what happened? You had this one site called R the Donald. During 2016, it was a pro-Trump site. It was dominating the front page. This is what everybody saw. And this so infuriated CEO Steve Hoffman that he was personally editing critical posts on it. Policy changes then kept it from leading the front page in the future. By 2017, they banned so-called hate speech. By 2018, they're quarantining certain subreddits and slowly killing them off. Right-wing content, for all intents and purposes, has just been wiped out. How quickly did this happen? A quote from a paper cited in the article called Hate Speech, Censorship, and Freedom of Speech, the Changing Policies of Reddit. Quote, in 2015, not that long ago, in 2015, Reddit expressed ambivalence toward the topic of hate speech and rather demonstrated their commitment to libertarianism when it concerned violent speech. This is reflexive of the general American political philosophy concerning hate speech, which ultimately enshrines offensive language and the First Amendment right to freedom of speech offered by the American Constitution. In regards to offensive content, Reddit moderators state specifically, it's okay to say, I don't like this group of people. It's not okay to say, I'm going to kill this group of people. Very reasonable. They also cited their commitment to preventing the speech police knocking down their door. By 2020, Reddit's stance on hate speech would transform completely. They would state everyone has a right to use Reddit free of harassment, bullying, and threats of violence. Communities and people that incite violence or that promote hate based on identity or vulnerability will be banned, unquote. And of course, when they say hatred based on identity, they don't mean protecting you, white guys. They mean everybody else. And as the author points out, the nature of the system is such that power mods, as they call it, the people who do nothing but this all day, they're the ones who get to change the system. Richard Hanania, you may have heard of him. My old colleague back at AlternativeRight.com, back when he was writing under the name Richard Host. He had an article back in 2021 called Why is Everything Liberal? And I'm sure he hates it now, but I still like this article. And to sum up what he says in this and then paraphrase it somewhat, why is everything liberal? Because they want it more. They donate more. They protest more. They go into professions that don't offer a lot of money. Academia, journalism, all these sorts of things, but they give you the chance to change society and rule over other people's lives. Pretty important. And these are the people, these liberals, people on the far left, they're the ones who consistently report lower rates of happiness and mental health. They're the people who are more likely to end friendships over political differences. You may know how that goes, but it's for those reasons that they get to rule. I'm not trying to be clever or snarky. I mean this entirely literally. Democracy empowers the neurotic, the weak, the hysterical, the broken. On a long enough timeline, it is rule by the worst. The more incompetent and spiteful you are in private life, probably the more effective you are as an activist. Which is why Hanania in this article, though I'm sure he would condemn this now, gently suggests strongman rule as a way of liberating normal citizens from being subjected to the tyranny of shrieking maniacs. I mean, as Peter Brimlow told me years ago, the Democrats have become the party of hysterical shrieking. But that's also why they win. And this includes online, maybe even especially online. I mean, let's level, guys, right? It's just us. You can tell me. I'm not going to tell anyone, but, let's get some things straight. Like, we're both probably pretty extreme by most people's standards, right? like ideologically. I mean, you're smart enough to know that my views are probably a bit more hardline even than what I say here. You can probably put two and two together. And I'm guessing you don't just tell everyone about what you think about every political issue or, say, historical event. We can level with each other here. Let's take that as read. But here's the thing. As extremists, as radicals, as vanguardists, we're still not going to spend 12 hours a day editing Wikipedia. We're not going to spend years of our lives trying to get people kicked off Reddit for no money. We're not going to build giant maps of who advertises for center-right sites like Breitbart and then call through every single one of them complaining and get other people to join us in this effort. In fact, the only time I've ever seen obsessive behavior like that from right-wingers is when they're having a meaningless personal fight with another right-winger. Like, this is reality. And this is another reason why we lost free speech. And this is a tactical reason for an absolutist defense of free speech, insofar as that's possible. Because once you concede that certain views need to be discouraged or banned, the most neurotic and obsessive people get to determine which those are. That's what happens. That is what happened. These people are willing to do this kind of stuff for hours and hours and hours for free out of sheer spite and out of a sense of self-righteousness. And you're not going to match that because you're normal. And that's the problem. I mean, look at another platform, Facebook. Huge communities, websites, subcultures, basically wiped out overnight. I mean, I'll tell you a quick personal story of how this affects people's lives. So a website I used to work for years and years ago, it's called WND. It was once called WorldNet Daily. And in its day, one of the biggest websites on the right, arguably the first one. It was like the first one that mattered. This goes back like decades and decades. Had a huge impact on the conservative movement, whatever else, huge in the evangelical Christian community, all this kind of stuff. And they were expanding and they're growing and they're making all this money. They were actually the ones who created the whole birther thing, which then Trump attached himself to. So really, if you go back far enough, they were responsible for Trump, if you want to connect everything. But they're booming. They're doing all this stuff. And then one day, just gone. What happened? Facebook changed the algorithm. Your whole business model is just gone. Oh, you thought you were going to make that much revenue next year? Yeah, 95% just wiped out. Now, part of that is the way Facebook operates in terms of wanting to get revenue from itself. Yeah, okay, it was a business decision, but part of it was also ideological. Like there were certain sources they did not want people going to, and so they can just wipe you out. You just get nuked from orbit, and there's nothing you can do about it. The author writes, quote, Facebook began flagging misinformation in December 2016 in response to the election of Donald Trump. Facebook did not make truth judgments internally, instead outsourcing official truth to a network of third-party fact-checkers. The German government's German Network Enforcement Act, passed in 2017, imposed large fines for illegal, including political content. Since there were no fines for over-enforcement, this encouraged Facebook to aggressively censor. To implement these changes, Meta hired 3,000 moderators in 2017 and rolled out a feature tagging stories as disputed, though this was removed in December 2017 when Facebook discovered that marking stories as disputed got them more attention. From 2018 through 2020, Facebook greatly expanded their misinformation flagging program and the number and powers of third-party fact-checkers involved. Fact-checkers gained the ability to flag, deboost, and eventually remove posts at will. This went into overdrive during the lockdowns. And of course, you remember how it was during COVID. And we should also remember what happened during the election that same year. Facebook suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story, which of course was A, true, B, reported by a major outlet, the New York Post, and C, obviously important to the 2020 election. Like that's actual election interference. And then in January 2021, they banned the president of the United States while he's still in office. I mean, I've been banned from Facebook, so I don't even know how long. Certainly American Renaissance and anything close to it as well. And of course, this has massive political consequences because what they did, more or less unnoticed, without protest, was they killed off an entire political subculture. And that has consequences. So for example, to return to this article, the author notes, quote, the big crackdown occurred in summer 2017. Rather than bans for hate speech, this is critical to understand, the administrator accounts for the big Facebook pages were all simultaneously banned with no reason given, at the device level, which took down most of the pages, which are automatically removed if the admin accounts are banned, including Disdain for Plebs, which for reference was started in 2014, reached 1,000 followers in 2015, 100,000 followers in 2016, had over 200,000 when it was taken down for good in summer 2017. These behind-the-scenes purges of administrators were not only more effective, but also impossible to appeal. While normal conservatives could be rallied against clear censorship of things they said themselves, they could not really grasp or understand the implications of extremely opaque account removals. Furthermore, the removal of a personal account is not as newsworthy as the censorship of a large page, even if the result is the same. What are the political consequences of this? Well, let's take one obvious example. Why are certain influencers popular and others not? Why are some people doing this full time and others can't? Decisions like this. I think even Mike Cernovich has made this point. It didn't fall on everyone equally. Why did Ben Shapiro gain so much prominence for a time? Well, because everyone to his right was basically banned. There were a lot of streamers, influencers, political figures. They had a lot going on in 2015, 2016, 2017, just wiped out. And so what you end up with is the only opposition becomes this kind of feckless opposition, this fake opposition, this controlled opposition. And I should point out, I'm using this term, but I'm not saying that the people who didn't get purged are knowingly controlled opposition. There's no way to know that, right? Like they may be giving their honest opinion. I'm not like they're in the pay of our enemies or something like that. But this is the reality. If everybody else is gone and the best you can do, so to speak, is Ben Shapiro or Eric Erickson or somebody like that, yeah, that skews the politics. And especially for younger people who are looking for radical alternatives, what you're doing is you're basically just giving them the left. Because now there's nobody left who can talk about this other stuff. I mean, one reason the DSA is so strong right now is because any nationalist alternative in the critical years of 2017 to 2023 was basically wiped out. Amazon too. 2017, they start censoring what books can and cannot be sold. Jared Taylor, my boss, he's gone. You can't find his books on there. They haven't brought him back. Merchandise got banned, as I said before, in 2015, anything with the Confederate flag. In 2018, they banned white supremacist and neo-Nazi symbols, whatever those could mean, under pressure from then Congressman Keith Ellison, now Minnesota Attorney General, former black nationalist and Antifa supporter. Antifa merchandise still available. Proud Boys, QAnon, 3%ers, all the rest of that all got banned subsequent years. Google searches. I mean, we all know that they're basically useless now. Did that just happen? Did they forget how to do it? No, it was deliberate. In 2017, Google began Project Owl, an effort to stop what Google termed problematic searches. And this was explicitly distinguished from previous areas of Google focus like preventing spam, adversarial optimization, piracy, low-quality content. So it meant now that when you search for something, what is it preference? Authoritative sources. Well, what are those? Reddit, which of course is already censored at this point. Wikipedia, which is being run by these insane far-left moderators. Governments, goes without saying. NGOs, goes without saying. So the very things that are either doing the censoring or have already been censored are now the people that are going to give you the results when you search for something. So this is why if you're doing something like, I think I saw an article in 2014 or from 2014 and I want to find it. You can't go to Google. You'll never find that. You're going to have to go to some like Russian or Chinese website you've never heard of, where it's just going to give you what you want instead of screaming at you what a bad person you are. And it goes beyond that. Then you had entire websites being taken down. Daily Stormer, probably the most famous example. You had the site registration stripped. You had Cloudflare remove DDoS protections. Well, that's an extreme site. Okay. Then you had a lot of the same things happen to Gab. Gab was refused entry on the App Store by Apple. In 2018, PayPal and Stripe prevented Gab from using their services. They faced all sorts of other issues. God knows American Renaissance had to deal with that kind of stuff for years. There was a domain registrar of last resort. It was called Epic. But then the company that they rented servers from threatened to pull those servers. So then Epic lost its stuff. And then they got hacked for hosting some pro-life site. So eventually they got sold off and they abandoned their free speech policy. Like the market cannot solve these problems. Every time there was a market solution for any of these things, domain hosting, basic financial services, being able to take a credit card payment, there was all sorts of pressure that we put upon them. And it's not just public relations. It's not just criticism. It's we're going to deny you servers. We're going to deny you DDoS protection. We are the bank and we are not going to honor these transactions because we got some sort of a message from the federal government. Like this is what happened. This happened everywhere. Or think of something else. It's old-fashioned now, but comment sections. That was where a lot of this politically incorrect rebellion really began. Now they're basically nuked, probably for that reason. And you may recall that Gab tried to do this browser extension called the Center, which was sort of bring that back. Well, of course, the minute they roll it out, it was removed from the Chrome and Firefox stores. Now you don't have comment sections anymore. Now, what's pushing all this? what structures, what systems. Sometimes it is the government directly. Even under the first Trump administration, I was writing about this at the time, the Department of Homeland Security would directly pressure tech companies to crack down on so-called far-right sites. That was happening in the Trump administration. Now, that does not seem to be happening right now, at least not within the United States. But you still have all these nominally private NGOs, media organizations, academics. Yeah, they're not part of the state technically, but they're funded by the state. They're funded by the taxpayer. In the same way, the refugee resettlement groups, they're not part of the government, but they're dependent on government funding. They are government organizations in any way that matters, and they usually have special state privileges. So, for example, under the EU's Digital Services Act, tech platforms have to defer to trusted flaggers. Well, what say does the public have over who gets to be a trusted flagger? What does that even mean? What protections do you have against them? Don't be silly. What are you talking about? That's not part of the government. We live in an open society. We have freedom of speech. And when you live in an open society and you have freedom of speech, some guy you've never heard of and that there's no appeal against, he gets to tell you what you can and cannot say. Same thing with so-called fact-check organizations. Take the Information Fact-Checking Network, one of the most influential ones. We are told, quote, the IFCN was founded by the Poynter Institute, a school of journalism, of course, in 2015 after a $1 million foundation grant. The Poynter Institute hired an ex-Southern Poverty Law Center employee to create a list of 515 news websites to be blacklisted by advertisers, including mainstream conservative ones like the Washington Examiner in 2019. The IFCN's funding sources are very similar to those of the fact-checking organizations it certifies. What a coincidence. Tax-privileged foundations, Google and Meta, and the U.S. State Department. From its launch in 2015, the IFCN has received funding from the following organizations: Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, the Duke Reporters Lab, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, of course, Google, of course, Facebook, Meta, of course, U.S. State Department, of course, National Endowment for Democracy, of course, the Omidyar Network, the Open Society Foundation, so George Soros, Fred Ord Foundation, Duke Reporters Lab, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, and the Park Foundation. If we add the European Union and the British and German foreign offices, this list covers the major funders of almost every fact-checking and anti-disinformation organization. This is how power works. All of those things that I just listed, all of those organizations with just countless millions of dollars at their disposal, they are never going to give a dime to anybody on our side. I promise you, American Renaissance is not going to get anything from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It will never happen. White privilege does not extend that far. And who's really driving it? Who urges us on? We got to do more. We got to do more. We got to do more. It's the journalists. All journalists are bastards, right? AJAB. This is how they work. And they think they have special status, and to some extent, they do. The governments of Canada, Australia, the Nordic countries, the United Kingdom, France, California, New York, Illinois, like American states too. They give officially recognized journalists direct subsidies or tax exemptions, and the European Union and the United Kingdom exempt them from some online speech restrictions. And this is in addition to the publicly funded broadcasters in the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, Austria, the Scandinavian countries, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which all enthusiastically participated in the closure of the internet. That was state-run media urging that. Give you an example. Dries van Langenhove, Flemish activist, very familiar to we identitarians. He was sentenced to jail. Why? Because there were illegal memes in a private group chat. How did they find those? Infiltrated by state television, infiltrated by state media. This is what they do. Journalists are the biggest opponents of free speech today. But you also can't neglect the NGOs. I mean, think of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I can personally testify to this with American Renaissance. The SPLC ran a coordinated pressure campaign starting in 2017, escalating in 2020 and 2021, going after internet companies, which included not only tech companies like Facebook and Twitter, but also banks, credit card processors, and any other financial infrastructure their enemies could touch to remove, quote, extremists from the internet and financial infrastructure. The SPLC maintains a blacklist, the SPLC extremist files, to be used in financial infrastructure and elsewhere, one with quasi-official status used across many major companies and platforms alongside the U.S. Treasury Department's OFAC. Now, that's from the article, but one thing I should add to this, he may be underestimating how much direct intervention was coming from the government itself. Because it's not an issue now, but I promise it probably will be again in a couple of years. One of the things you have to deal with if you're in this thing of ours, is one day your bank account goes away. And then you have to go in and try to figure out what's going on and everything else. And if you talk to enough people, what you generally find out is they got some kind of a message, usually from a government authority, saying you're high risk. And that's how they get you. And eventually, once you go through enough, you just don't have any other alternatives. Now, you could argue the SPLC doesn't have that much clout anymore, which is true. I mean, they're under a DOJ indictment. We'll see what happens with that. But they're not the only one. They're not even the most powerful one. They probably never were the most powerful one. Center for Countering Digital Hate. You've got the ADL. The ADL has always been more powerful, I would say. Countless other NGOs. The point is, none of this just happens. None of it is just spontaneous. It was made to happen. It was made by people, specific people, who made choices to destroy people's lives, censor truthful information, take away free speech from you. And it was done in the name of censoring hate. Now, what does that lead to? Yeah, it fueled the far left in a lot of ways, some political consequences we've talked about. But look, that's just me being a rightoid, right? Okay, you're a far right nut job. Fine. Fuck me. Like, forget that. What are the deeper consequences that matter to everyone, regardless of your political views? Well, here's the thing. No one wants to touch or debate or discuss controversial topics in a serious way anymore for its own sake, which means that you can't find truthful information, at least not easily online. Say I'm a liberal, but I want to know, like objectively just know for my own purposes. It could be for the liberal purposes. Facts about biological sex differences. I go online. I try to find out. I try to find debates from the top experts. Am I going to get anything? No. You're going to get nonsense. Why? Because anyone credible has been scared off. They don't want to lose their account. And you also, let's say, oh, I want to be an influencer. I want to talk about serious things. I want to build quality content. Well, you can't. You can't build a career on this kind of thing. It could all go away tomorrow. What's the point of investing anything? What's the point of doing all this money and trying to have a great studio and trying to make sure that you have experts coming on and you've got a whole procedure and everything else? The next day, some guy that you've never heard of could just take your whole account. The next day, your PayPal gets gone. The next day, your bank account's gone. You just get nuked. You don't know who did it. You don't know why. So what is the interest? What is the interest in people putting out online content right now? You want to put out garbage. You want to put out garbage as quickly as possible. You want to make a quick buck. You want to pull off the scam, and then you want to get out. Isn't that explain the internet today? Hasn't the whole level of discourse gone down? And yeah, I know that like the third world is online and people blame that, and maybe that's part of it. But even I, the huge racist, I'm like, there's probably a bit more to it than that. Like the structural incentives have screwed everything up. And censorship is a big reason why. Like, look, what should be our stance with all this? How do we get it back? And I'm going to level with you guys. I don't really care about limited government in the abstract. Like I am a statist to the point where I'm like a right Hegelian. You talk about like freedom and rights and natural law. I just don't think these words mean anything outside of state context. And I do realize how un-American that sounds. Point conceded. But having said all that, I do actually believe in free speech, like as a principle, as an absolute principle. And I believe in it for what you might say is a very disappointingly practical and even lazy reason. I think I'm right on the issues that matter. I'm right about race. I'm right about morality. I'm right about the way society should be structured. And for that reason, I think given something close to the marketplace of ideas that we were all told exists when we were kids, my side's going to win. I don't need to censor the other side. But more to the point, once you turn into a censorship battle, once it turns into a contest for whose activists are more effective in censoring online, we're not going to win that kind of battle. We don't have the neurotics. We don't have the obsessives. We never will. And besides that, when you have a system, as we do now, when certain kinds of speech are de facto illegal because they create a hostile work environment or saying a certain word constitutes fighting words, as we just saw in the Shiloh Hendricks case, or when you have a racial spoil system where people have a vested interest in disingenuously claiming victimization, what happens? It leads to a situation where a lot of the complaints are just made up or exaggerated, or people are going around looking for reasons to be offended. How many people does that describe at this point? As the author points out, and keep in mind, why isn't he on the show? He wanted to be anonymous. That tells us a lot about the state of things, doesn't it? Quote, "The closure of the internet happened, and its approximate scope should be common knowledge, and there needs to be a convenient name and narrative for it so that it sticks in people's heads. Censorship, suppression, and heavy-handed political manipulation and moderation are the norm today, and many seem to have forgotten that it was ever otherwise. No one has named this phenomenon or pointed out explicitly and in so many words that it was ideologically motivated, that it happened across every major platform at the same time, rather than a series of individual incidents. A professional historian could spend their entire career chronicling it. McCarthyism is taught in schools, and the closure of the internet is orders of magnitude larger than McCarthyism ever was. I agree with every word of that. This is one of those solutions where it sounds simple, but it's really the only way. It has to be implemented from the top down. No NGO ever gets money if they advocate for speech control. That is an absolute 100% right, and it is insane that the Trump administration hasn't done anything on this. That is an absolute right for people, for citizens at least, to have access to basic financial services, to domain registrations, that you can't be discriminated against based on ideology, the essentials for conducting business. And that the American government will punish other countries and not work with other countries on regulatory matters if they try to censor Americans. We have seen a little bit of that when it comes to Europe. But paradoxically, this can only happen with centralized leadership, with strong executive leadership, which is the contradiction of the whole thing. Because we know how to fight centralized tyranny, which is why I'm not really afraid of it. We know how to react against top-down authority. But when it's this web operating in the shadows, we let it happen. When the people who are oppressing us claim to be our victims, we let them get away with it. It's a lot harder to point to one figure to hold responsible. And it's especially dangerous when the very people who won't shut up about democracy and the open society, the academics, the journalists, the activists, they are the very people who have destroyed free speech in this country. At this point, you will live under some form of authoritarianism. It's just a question of who's going to be wielding the power. Hey guys, quick reminder before we continue. You can follow Identity Politics on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, and TikTok. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, sign up for our email list. If you believe in this work and you want to help us stay fully independent, you can support us directly on Ko-Fi. We offer bronze, silver, gold, and white membership tiers, or you can give a one-time contribution, whatever works for you. Every bit of support helps fund production, research, and our ability to speak freely without corporate or platform pressure. All the links are in the description below. Now back to the show. My guest today is Jeremy MacKenzie. He's the head of Second Sons. He's a military veteran. He emerged during the Canadian convoy protests during COVID, and we all remember how brutal the Canadian government was with them. But now he's best known for his nationalist activism. Second Sons is a men's nationalist club that just did a big meeting near Calgary, and the famously unhinged Canadian media is going nuts about that, so I had to have him on right now. Jeremy MacKenzie of Second Sons, check it out. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us here today. I mean, Second Sons has been having such a big impact. I see stuff about you guys all the time, and it looks like numbers are coming up. It seems like everybody's really active. I got to congratulate you. It seems like everything's really going strong right now.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Yeah, things are clicking along. Nothing too spectacular, just slow and steady. We've taken a deliberate effort to keep the vetting quality and integrity in place, because you don't want to bring in hundreds and hundreds. I mean, we've had a lot of applications. We've had probably maybe 10,000 over the last couple of years. Definitely more than 6,000 or 7,000. So I'm not personally directly involved. I just kind of touch base with the guys to see how things are going. But if we just take everybody, it's just
right.
We've seen the Big Tent approach before and how that is a disaster and doesn't work very well at all. And just implementing some very minor, moderate level sort of barriers to entry will filter and quality out a lot of undesirable people in the first place. And, you just prove that it's important to you and that it's something you want to do. And when you do that, you'll get a much, the yield of people that you do get are going to be way higher quality. And one of them is worth 50 others who never show up, never, so it's slow and steady. It's been going well. We just had our nationals event in Alberta last month, in early July. We're going to have a video out sometime in the next few weeks, probably before the end of the month, but we'll see how that goes. We had a weekend out there. It was great. And we had some of the guys from all over the country show up. Had we done it in maybe Ontario, we probably would have had twice as many or more. It's a huge country. It's so expensive to travel. especially now with the Iran being defeated 50 or 60 times in this never-ending Monday to Friday business hours war that's off on the weekends. Things are expensive, so it's hard. So I try to move around and touch base with the guys where I can and visit everywhere at least once a year. But yeah, it's a task. It's a big place.
Well, I saw that the media is going nuts about it, so I wanted to get into that a little bit. And of course, like the tones of shock and horror, and it's the same everywhere, right? I mean, if you have Patriot Front or whatever other group like does something like, oh, there are guys training in the woods, it's a militaristic thing, and it's like it's perfectly normal, but I mean, that's got to be the biggest frustration, right? Just dealing with like the constant hysteria from the Canadian media, because I gotta say, I think your media is worse than ours in terms of how they cover these sorts of things.
Yeah, I think you're right. Ours is pretty much almost exclusively funded by the state.
Right.
There are some alternatives, but they're funded by the Zionist state. So there's not really any people's media or independence. It's very few and far between. There's a few personalities here and there, but you got to remember that Canada's population is like, what is the size of California? It's like 45 million, maybe, or
give or take
something. So it's about the same size spread over the continent. So it's a much smaller pool of people, and you're only going to have per every 10,000 million people, whatever it is, that will be of any quality or be any contribution worth talking about is going to be a lot smaller. So yeah, we don't have a lot of that, but it's pretty hysterical and ridiculous. I've just tuned it out since probably a couple of years ago now. I just once they did everything that they did to me with the trials and the court and everything, it was just, I realized quickly that they just lie. You go through this process. I'm sure this is familiar to a lot of the guys in this kind of environment. If they get involved, especially if they're like a public facing person, initially it's, you're kind of surprised and shocked to see the things that are being said and reported about you. And you go, oh, this is just a horrible misunderstanding. I'll just talk to them. And then, because I'm not a crazy person, they just don't understand what I'm trying to say. And then you do that and they're like, oh, great. And you're like, there, I'm glad we cleared that up. And then they turn around and make it worse and twist and you're like, oh, you're just lying on purpose. Oh, okay. My mistake. I thought you were actually trying to understand things, not just hurt me. So like, oh, you're fighting. I understand what this means. I just tuned it out. It doesn't, me reading it is going to do what? And they don't really have a lot of an audience. State media is state media, and everybody knows that. It's been pretty widely disregarded since COVID. Most people don't give it much credence. It's basically a tabloid at this point. And if it wasn't for reaching into the pockets of the Canadian citizens to pay for it, it wouldn't exist. They've gone bankrupt I don't know how many times, and they get bailouts, billions of dollars every other year. Just keep operating to force content into people's throats that nobody wants. And the only place you can see it, anybody's actually watching it, are like airport waiting lounges and bars that nobody's even really watching it. It's just on for noise. That's basically their main audience, is people who are down looking at their phones and all of that. So most people get their news from social media and their own kind of preferred echo chambers that they're in these days. So I just it's a nice high weather or high water mark or bellwether or temperature gauge on what the state is doing and thinking at any given time. And it's funny that because they do the same thing here. Militiamen in the woods and military, this and that. When that's never been the case, but they always go there, and for a couple of reasons, because it's the most effective way to put these people away and get them dealt with and put them in jail, or whatever. Because it's not anything anybody wants in their society. But two, I think deep down, they know what they're doing to people, and they know that in a lot of ways that would be a justified reaction, like you're seeing in Ireland and a lot of other places. Like, it's you're accusing them of what you're guilty of, right? You're
right.
I think they know what they're doing.
I mean, the question is this: if you look at the polls for the Liberal government, if anything, they seem to be getting more popular with time. I mean, it seems like the Canadian population is extremely satisfied with everything that's going on, which sounds crazy to those of us down here, because we know what's going on with cost of living, with affordability, with all these Indians coming in, exacerbating all these problems. But then at the same time, you also have this emerging nationalist resistance, and you hear more and more about it all the time. And there definitely seem to be movements there when there was just nothing 5 years ago. So what's happening? Because both these things are happening at once. Is it just a generational thing where the boomers are self-satisfied and they just don't understand what's happening?
Sure. So the nationalist thing, I'll start with that, because I'm definitely a product of that. I think it's an evolution or a maturation of just public discontent in the first place. I think most sensible, decent men especially just detect that there's things that are not right. There's a lot of lying going on. There's a lot of stealing going on. There's a lot of, corruption and rot, and you just investigate and you try to figure out what that is. Inevitably, you're going to, if you don't give up and you're not dissuaded, you have a little bit of courage and you're not easily, dissuaded by people calling you names or whatnot. And you can just look at, the cold facts as they are. The situation is what it is and the patterns are what they are and the names are what they are and so on. So eventually you're going to reach a point where, that's just a logical conclusion. So there's some of that happening, and the fact that that's being replicated around the world around the similar time, I think is a signal that it's a reaction to the things that they're doing to people. And this is just a natural consequence. There are some who are going to just figure it out and start to, like an immune system response, like white blood cells or something will, kick into action is when you get sick. So I think that's part of that. And as for the election thing, is funny because it's they lie with statistics a lot. So yeah, they'll do the polling and say, I think the most recent one is the Liberals have like 47% support or something, or 45, and the Conservatives are this, and now they're down to 31. It's not that the voters have moved from the Conservatives to the Liberals; it's that they've just gone home. So a lot of the support that they had was based around Justin Trudeau. Everybody hated him and was very annoyed with him and so on. And they just wanted him to be gone. And that was what the Conservatives basically ran their whole platform on, was we're not him, so it's our turn now. And they just, the Liberals aren't stupid. They've got, there's the two brothers that helped with the Obama campaign, Emmanuel, Rom, and I think they're tied in with some of the strategy playbooks there in the Liberal Party. So they've got some smart people over there that know what they're doing. They're not good folks, but they, they're good at what they do. And they just replaced Trudeau with somebody else.
Podesta, that's what I was thinking of. Is it them?
No, but that's I think that's in that circle of I think it's in the same snake den anyway.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, there's a couple of the Koch brothers as well. There's a bunch of there's a lot of crossover between the American Democrats and the Canadian Liberals, like a lot. There's some between the American right Zionist and the Canadian right, which is also very Zionist as well, but more so on the left. But what's happened is that most people have just thought it's voter apathy. Like we've had, I think, so 65% turnout for elections. So 40% of the country isn't even voting, doesn't care. And those are the people that they need to talk to inspire to get off the couch and get involved. But they don't see anybody speaking to them or moving them or saying or doing anything that they relate to. And it's just this, they're all more or less the same. The left wing, the right wing, they're all the same up here. They're all basically left wing. They're either very left wing or left wing. The Conservative Party's left wing. And they're all just fighting over the same people. They're fighting over the migrants and the donor class, and that's it. The actual Canadian people are completely ignored. And they became activated during COVID, during the trucker convoy. Like this seemed like something is happening this time, and now is the time to get engaged. And they just fumbled the ball horrendously. They blew the biggest lead, I think, in history. They had a 30 or 35 point lead going into the last election, like 6 months out, and they blew it. Like unbelievable. And you can trace it back to, I remember when it happened, and one of the guys up here, another Canadian account, Fortisax here on Twitter, he said this, at the time, I think he even quote tweeted it, and it was from 2025 or 24, whenever it was, that Poilievre, the Conservative leader, got up and said basically what Trudeau had said years earlier: a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. Like he said, it doesn't matter if your name is Poilievre or Patel, or Singh or Sullivan or whatever, so there's no such thing, and right then I was like, and it never recovered. They just started on the way down and doubled down and did the costumes and the dancing and the Diwali festivals and the Chinese this and the Israel that, and everybody just, we've seen this before. This isn't new. This isn't different. This isn't changed. This is the same old hat crap we're tired of. Trudeau's gone. COVID's over. So all of that steam just went away, went back on the bench, and went back home. So it's not like, the Liberals are popular. It's, they had their 100 soldiers on the field and the other team had 80, but then 40 of them decided they don't care anymore and went home. So now it looks as though they're still the same 100 guys there were before, but they look much more powerful because the other team half of them have just quit and gone home because they don't care.
That's a really good explanation, especially for an American audience that may not know the ins and outs of all this kind of stuff. Why do you think the liberals still have the hold on their core voters, though? I mean, do you think it seems to be a lot of older voters, especially those who actually benefit from the increase in asset prices, especially housing? Yeah. I mean, is it just a question of there seems to be a generational battle going on within the entire Western world, where if you are, I think it's a bit much to be like, oh, the Generation Z is so based and everything else. You look at the polls, that's not true. But what is different is that if you are young and you are right wing, like you're actually right wing. Yeah. Like you're a nationalist, and everybody is either like a nationalist or a communist, and there's nobody in between. Whereas these other guys, I mean, it's almost like they're operating as if the demographics are still what they were in Canada in 1990. Like they don't even seem aware of like the change that has taken place.
That's exactly what they're doing. The lukewarm, that's exactly what they are. They're just people that, go with whatever. But that is what the conservatives are certainly doing. They're just behaving as though it's 2004 or something. And the messaging is the same. They're just doing all the same kind of things that didn't really work then and definitely don't work now. And they're unwilling to change and don't care. And I actually just did a podcast episode last night specifically about this to a large degree, that they're not going to change just because they're losing, because they're getting paid more than ever. They get a pay raise every year. They got $40-50 million, a year. Why would they? I said that they have the hockey teams, the Toronto Maple Leafs, have a higher performance standard than they do, because if you don't make the playoffs, you're fired. The general manager's replaced, the coach is replaced, the players get traded. You're benched, you're this, you're that, you're scratched. And we're in an existential fight for our survival as a nation, and they're mailing it in and dropping the ball and failing. Everyone goes, it's all right, we'll try again next year. Like, eventually there's not going to be a next year, because every year that we lose, there's less to preserve and conserve in the first place. The Conservative Party have not conserved anything but themselves, and that's really their main function. They are in the way, and my argument is that they need to be convinced to drastically change course or be destroyed. Because Canada is a finite place. It's a big country. We have a lot of money, relatively. I mean, not to the United States. We have a $2 trillion economy. And, Canadian citizens, 25 million people, plus, a quarter of, I think it's 42 million now. And like a quarter of these people just got here in the last 15, 20 years. So we only have a certain amount of money, time, resources, energy to commit to anything like fighting against Ottawa. And the Conservative Party absorbs all of it because it's the only game in town. It's compared to like the giant pumpkin theory. So how you grow a giant pumpkin is they pinch off the vines to all the other pumpkins and they feed. So all the nutrients just go to one and it becomes huge. And that's it. So that's great if the pumpkin is good, but if it's rotten and you can't eat it, it's a waste of time. It's a complete waste. You'd be better off having a whole bunch of medium-sized pumpkins than this one. And you're paying for all this money to somebody to go do security for your town, and they take all your money, so you can't afford groceries or anything else, and they don't even show up for work. So why are we tolerating this? Like 97% of their money from the 2024 election run, 97% of their $48.5 million they got was from Canadian donations. So stop paying them. Just starve them out, and you don't like it, then disintegrate or change, because this isn't working for anybody. You've got a sort of a secession referendum kind of crisis happening in Alberta. Half the province wants to leave the country, and this is their fault. That's a failure of leadership. When you've got your country disintegrating and deteriorating, is because there's no captain on the ship, and everybody's pointing fingers at each other and fighting with each other instead of who they should be, which is the leaders have failed, and they need to be replaced. They need to fix themselves or be replaced. There's really no other way around that. And you can't just go and form, we'll just start your own party. Well, you can't, because all the people who are interested in changing this are giving all of their time, money, and energy to the giant pumpkin and the Conservatives, and there's nothing left over for anybody else to build with. They've tried that with the PPC and other things, and it just there's shreds of there's no farmland left to grow anything with. So that's it. There's really no other way around that. So I propose to people it's like a siege mentality. They won't come out and engage the public. They won't deal with protesters or dissenting. There's no dissenting opinions allowed in the Conservative Party. They're all pro-war, pro-LGBT, pro-money spending, all the same stuff as everybody else. It's just they think it should be their turn because they have a blue tie on and the red team has been in for a long time. That doesn't move anybody. So they need to get with the program or get out of the way.
It's a delicate situation because at some level, the real enemy of the nationalist movement is always the conservatives. I mean, that's easy to say. It's certainly true in terms of ideology. But then, of course, it's like, okay, what do we do in terms of practical politics? And it's like, well, these guys are a little closer to the position, and that's how people end up getting involved in conservative stuff. That's definitely true of my life. But I mean, with Canadian politics, and I say this as an outsider, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm agreeing with you here. They've got to be the worst center-right party in the Anglosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be the worst in the West. Like, they're worse than the CDU in Germany. Like, I don't, like, it's not even close. Like, the CDU in Germany is, like, better than they are. And so I'm not one of these guys who's like, oh, we got to destroy the center-right, and that's how we win. But frankly, in Canada, I don't see another way forward. And I think you're right. I mean, they've people start your own nationalist party. Like, they did try that. I remember that like a few years ago. Well, it was the PPC, right? And they tried to do like a whole thing, but it never got off the ground because at some point you just got to like cut this off as a potential alternative. Is there any sign that's happening? Because I mean, you can't just keep losing election after election like this, especially gimme elections like last time without your own voters saying to hell with this. We got to look for something else.
The fact that they lost that one, I mean, he should have been turfed immediately. Like, Poilievre should not be the leader. That's an incredible. You didn't just lose and fail. You lost the biggest lead in history ever.
He ate an apple once. It was really cool. So, like, we have to put him in charge forever.
I don't know who's focus testing these things. So I was, joking and laughing around last night with some people on the street. But also, it's true. Like, just this fundamental. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but so it's kind of a strange. And I think they don't know it because it's more something that women would focus on. Like, men focus on policy and strategy and different things, and women are a lot more into personalities and drama and this kind of stuff. But Pierre Poilievre's manager and campaign manager is his ex-girlfriend, who he was with for years, a long time ago. And then he left her for this hotter, younger Venezuelan woman and had a family, got married to her. And Jenny, the manager, still works there, and she's getting fatter and fatter over like, she blew up. She's huge now. She used to be a cute girl. Now she's enormous and works as a single alone. Like, I'm like, okay, guys, who in the world, just show of hands, who thinks it's a good idea to make your upset, jilted ex-girlfriend in charge of your career? Does anybody think that's a good idea? Or maybe no. So I don't. Maybe is she sabotaging him on purpose? I don't know. But the things they have him doing and saying, like, they're giving him makeovers and trying to make him look tough and stuff. And it's just like they'll sometimes I'll say things on my stream or my podcast, and then a week later will come out of his mouth slightly different. So I know they're watching me, and they're because I have a large commander of the attention of that hardline right wing, more nationalist people in the country. So I'm sure it makes sense that they're going to tune in to see like what what's there that we can maybe use or whatever. But the whole thing is like, I'm very sincere and I mean everything that I say, and I try to live in that space and truth every day. You can't take that and paint it on a person, a politician. It doesn't work because everybody can tell it's not real. He doesn't mean that. He's not actually this guy. He's just, the other day he was out hitting the pads in a boxing gym somewhere, and they're like, I'm like, you're wearing dress shoes and dress pants with a dress shirt tucked in. Like, have you ever been to a boxing gym in your life? You're going to be. No one does this.
Not in dress shoes.
It was, or he might have had sneakers on, but like, he's not even dressed for it. Like, he clearly doesn't. And anybody who knows boxing, like, he's terrible. It's just, this is just pandering, and it's like, it's like, I want the prize, I want the cake, I want at the end of the road without having to do the work. I want people to see me as this guy, but I don't want to do any of the things I need to do to be that guy. I just want people to, so I'll just cheaply throw together a video and give me your money, give me your time. Like, that's even more insulting. And they fundamentally don't understand what's happening. They're stuck in this 2005, 2004 paradigm of politics where you just pander to different groups and get their votes, and that's it, where that's not what's going on anymore. There's people at like a spiritual level understand things are very wrong and gone sideways. Everybody's lying, nothing's trustworthy, everything's falling apart, and they're not adapting with that. They're not willing to come down and meet people where they are in reality, where it's very dark and bad and people are dying. There's suicides like crazy. There's they got state-sponsored euthanasia program that's killed more people than the First and Second World Wars combined almost now. It just in 15 years, like or less. That's they're harvesting their organs and selling them. We're giving drugs to people in British Columbia, like methamphetamine and crack. Just have it, because it's mean to deny people who are addicts like a safe supply of drugs. And it's all done under this, smiling face with green backdrops and, in a sunny field. And it's evil. It is the most evil thing you can imagine because it preys upon people who want those things. They want nice things. They want good things. They want to help people. And they dig into their heart and say, oh, there's your weakness, right? There's your empathy. And we're just going to take that and use it and we're going to kill you with it. And it's demented, and it's hard to reach people when they've already largely made up their minds. So the liberal voters are mostly a lot of boomers who are, to that comment, they're a lot of vested in their life. They've had been property owners since the 60s or 70s. They bought a house for $80,000 in 1975 or something, and now it's worth $6 million in downtown Toronto or Calgary, and they're doing great. And they're not affected by any of these things that are happening, very rarely, because they're in wealthy or well-to-do gated communities, rural areas. The cities are become very hollowed out, and they're largely, minority controlled. The Canadian people are minority in every city except Montreal and Halifax in the country. So everywhere west of Montreal is majority non-Canadian in every single city. And they say, oh, the Canadians, those aren't Canadian people voting for this. This is, foreigner to the tune of a quarter of the country just got here in the last 15 years. And they vote Liberal because the Liberals say, we love foreigners more than anyone. And we want to give them money and grants and tax breaks and subsidies. And of course, they're going to vote for these things. And on the other side, the Conservatives, their answer is, last night, this guy sent in a super chat. He said, did you see the Conservatives' latest thing? I said, no, what was it? They said, we support deporting illegal migrants. I said, oh, wow. I propose that we obey laws we already have. Holy shit. Wow. That's incredible. That's revolutionary, Pierre. I've never thought of that. Enforcing laws we already have. I agree with the way things should be already. Like, this is your answer to what they're doing. And it's just, you've nothing to say. You have entire generations of young people, especially with no future. Where are you going to go? You can't even go to school. You're white. Sorry. You can't get a job. You're white. Sorry. We hate you. You don't like it? Go get a maid appointment. Go get suicided by the government. And what's your answer? They come like, maybe the Conservatives can help me, and they see him wearing an Indian headdress costume and at a Diwali celebration, and then he's speaking Chinese, and now he's over here dancing for Israel. So everybody's just like, the country's very depressed and sad. So if I wanted to say anything to the Americans, like, what's going on in Canada? Have you ever seen someone or ever had a friend who's just, things have gone really badly for them, a bad divorce, they lost the kids to some evil woman and all that, and they're just drinking and doing drugs, and you're like, you're destroying yourself. What are you doing? And they're like, I just don't care, man. I want to die, basically. That's kind of, in a nutshell, that's where the country is right now. And it's very sad. And it's hard. We're trying to keep people moving and motivated. And that's a large part of what the club is for, because there's nowhere for men, especially. I'm not a female, so I can't, it's not really my place to, manage or that kind of thing. But, men especially don't have a place to come together and congregate and be in that kind of environment where we need to develop. It's normal and natural for men to belong into like groups and hierarchies and kind of and grow and learn. We grow and learn from each other in experiences. And I had this in the military. I joined when I was 17 years old, and you go from being a 17-year-old kid in school, everybody you deal with is 17, to I've got a 42-year-old retired airborne regiment warrant officer screaming in my face, and he's covered in tattoos, and he smells like whiskey at 7:00 in the morning. You're like, gee. But it's an extreme example, but you've got all these different guys from all over the world and time and years and decades in, and everything they've been through, and every hard day you have, or they'll have something to tell you or help you with or teach you. And they'll say, listen, buddy, this is what you got to do, or that's not what you want to do, or this or that. I had that benefit that nobody else gets anymore, besides joining maybe a hockey team, but even that's not really the same. And what else is there? Men are, get out of here. Toxic masculinity. We don't want that. There's nowhere for them to go outside of like the army, which I don't recommend, because they're just going to send you over to Latvia or Poland or Ukraine, and you're just going to end up in a box somewhere. For what? Which, can be an attractive option to a lot of people who are like, well, it beats sitting here waiting to get run off the road by an Indian trucker or something. So again, right. It's a depressing place, man.
Well, we've talked so much about partisan politics, but Second Sons obviously is not, you're not going to be starting like a political party anytime soon to like challenge the Tories or something like that. But this siege mentality that you're doing, it seems like you're coming at it from like a totally different point of view, where it's like, look, we're building networks. We're getting men to start operating as men. We're training, building skills, all this kind of stuff, building networks. What is the if you can get into it a little bit, like what is the strategy? Is it just a question of these sort of things that can't go on forever don't, right? And so there doesn't seem to really be a way for the Tories to just keep going forever, that there will be an oppositional force on the right, if you can call it that, among the nationalists, among the actual Canadian people, that is going to emerge. And it's already emerging inevitably. Eventually it'll have a political expression. Is it just like getting everybody's personal stuff in order and waiting for that? Or is there a political project at the end of this where it's like, no, we're actually going to run for something, if only to get certain issues into the public eye?
Yeah. So I'm pretty cynical about elections in this country as it is, and I'm sure it's not much better down there. I mean, we've seen a lot of what I've been saying is like, look at
it's not much better. I can probably see that.
The mail-in ballots and the stuff. Like, do people think that's not going on in here? Like, I'm holding a pen. You vote in pencil in Canada, like. Preposterous. And they would have like hundreds of thousands of ballots that they've missed or lost or miscounted, or like there's all these things that happen, and you're like, they lie and cheat with everything else. You have to be out of your mind to think there's not some of that going on also. And they're not fair. It's complicated, and it's a sophisticated thing. It's not easy to explain in just a few words, but it's not as simple as it sounds. It's like just running an election and have better ideas than these people and you win. Like, no, it's the money. Okay. You need the Liberals won, I think, with $75 million last election. So it's like, okay, you want to run, are you going to give me $75 million? Because that's what you need to win. First of all, do you have 75? No, you don't. Okay, well then forget it. You're never going to go anywhere. I don't care how good your ideas are, because that's not how the world works, sunshine. So that's a problem. But I guess it's called meta politics more than anything. So like people are wanting to just vote for a party, change the guy in charge, and we're done. That's like the very last step. Everything below that is still unfixed. So we have to go back to the ground level. And I view, nationalism as it's not really a political ideology to me. It's more of a spiritual thing, because it's a commitment to your family, your blood, your DNA, your home, it's much more than just politics. It's near and dear to your heart. So it's a decision that you choose to, I'm going to commit myself to the family and the people first. It doesn't mean I'm after anybody or want to hate anybody else. It's just like, if you're attacking my family, I'm going to defend them and defend myself against you. That's that. So just don't do that, and we won't have a problem. So in that way, the individual is the smallest unit of the nation. If it was like a big tree or a human body, it's not one thing. It's made up of millions of cells or branches and leaves and all these different things. And that's the individual man and person. And we're like sick at that level. We're not sick at the guy in charge. We're sick at, like, you go outside and everybody's fat and depressed and killing themselves and on drugs. And COVID happened. They ran us all over. You'd think, oh, well, the people never put up with this, but they did. They rolled over. There was no team mentality. There was no cohesion. There was no union. There was just individuals everywhere. And, everybody just was looking out for themselves. In Quebec, a nurses union was successful in saying, we're not taking it, so fire us all. And they went, okay, well, then you don't have to. Like, do you see the power? So you need this cohesion. You need like a unified group of people. We don't have any of those. So regardless of whatever needs to be done in the future, there's a lot of things that could, politics is, potentially an option. I mean, it's a long shot at this point, especially with the demographics being underwater and shrinking. I mean, you'd have to move real quick. But then you've got situations like developing in Ireland and other parts of Europe. Like, it could get very violent. Like, the police are already unable to contend with how out of control everything is already. There's no indication it's going to get better anytime soon. So I don't care what people think about it. Just as a man and as a father and as a, someone who likes being alive, I'm not going to just, cross my fingers and hope that my security and my safety is going to rely on a bunch of people who clearly don't care about me and hate me, and then or worse. So it's in your best interest to network and have a tight group of guys around and their families. And so at least if something happens in the town, in the city, wherever, there's 30 guys and their families around that I know we can count on each other. And that's a much bigger team than the next group, which is going to be, hopefully it's enough to contend with any kind of gang or something that's going to be coming to, you're at least a harder target than the rest. So there's that reason, but there's any number of things that could happen, but all of them require a united, cohesive amount of manpower to deal with, because the problem is too big for any one individual. It's going to require teams of people. So if you don't have a team of people to do whatever, but then what are we talking about? It's like people in the woods, like, we're going to build a castle, and they're all arguing back and forth about how big the castle is going to be. If it's going to have a moat, is it going to be made of this limestone? Is it going to whatever? And I'm standing here going, guys, you don't even own an axe or a shovel. Like, what are you building with? You just, you have a spoon? Like there are things we need to do to even be in a position to build a castle. So worry about that later. So, and that's way down the road. So it's like, I can't deal. That's crazy. I'm like trying to predict the weather 10 years from now. I'd rather deal with the weekend coming up that we can see. And then when that's out of the way, we'll do the next thing and the next thing that makes sense, and just go in that direction. And there's a lot of people, especially in the right, that have been stuck with this. I think because it's easier, and weakness is a big problem we have, especially with the men. They don't want to admit that there's anything wrong with them or that they're too soft or something, but it's easier to just argue about and be the ideas man all day than do anything. Then just say, okay, well, let's just start here. We're going to argue about how to get to the top of the mountain all day. Well, what's that guy doing? He's walking towards the mountain. He's crazy. Like, I'm trying to do what you've been, talking about this whole time. Like, you can't get there from standing here, can you? So, go until you find an obstacle and then scratch your head and go, how do we get around this? And work with that and deal with that. And if you're successful, then continue and just keep repeating that process until you win or you die. And that's life. So I think, that's basically it. Yeah.
Oh, it's like a preparatory men thing, like Nietzsche talked about. I mean, you got to have these things done before you can do any great project. And I think a lot of people want to skip to like the final stage as opposed to the first stage. If you don't even have a team, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. What then is the pitch, so to speak? I mean, because obviously at this point you're getting a lot of media attention. And this is one of the funny things about dealing with the media is when they do these sorts of things, a lot of the stories that are meant to scare people off and tell everybody how dangerous and evil you are ends up attracting people, because then people look around who are looking for an alternative and they're like, this is actually pretty awesome. So somebody comes in and they say, okay, what's this all about? What exactly is the point of doing this? What do you tell them, especially younger guys?
Yeah, well, a lot of probably a version of what I just said, but younger guys especially, the value is in that, in the male camaraderie in an environment where there's intangible things that you can learn and grow as an individual that you're not going to find anywhere else. Like, it just doesn't exist. You can't get it playing Call of Duty on a Discord server. Like, that's not real. Like some of the things we do, like there's a lot of footage and stuff. You'll see a picture of the guys like sparring and fighting each other and stuff, and they'll be like, they're training for a race war. Like, no, you fool. Okay, so the people don't wear
boxing gloves are in a race war, but
people that train in fighting understand immediately because they know the value. I mean, you'll hear old boxing coaches say this all the time. They go, we got to get them kids off the street, man. We got to get them in the club, and we get them, because you get them focused on something like this, and it's so character developing and skill building, and it's the intangibles outside of just getting punched and punching people in the face. There's the discipline, the overcoming the intimidation and the fear factor, and confronting things. And they say, and it's very true, whoever you are, it will come out in the ring in your fighting style. Like, you will always revert back to who you really are. And then you can work on that. And it requires physical commitment and working through pain and all of these things that are necessary for a man to build himself, to complete himself. You're not born with these inherent characteristics. No one's born like Leonidas of the three. Oh, he was just always like that. No, you have to do things to complement and build and build up and construct your being and complete yourself. And those things are always hard to do. They're on the other side of doing scary, intimidating, difficult things, and that's what we're doing. Like, we'll take them out. We just had nationals there, and I was a little concerned. We'll see how it goes. I put them through a bit of a bag drive in the foothills of the Rockies, and the previous year we did it was like 3 or 4 hours. It was just a pretty good this was longer. It was like 6 or 7, and it was like 10 or so kilometers through the one guy had a prosthetic leg I saw when they're all formed up in the morning facing the the road. Everybody shut up, no talking kind of thing. And he's got a prosthetic leg. I'm like, whoa, man, this is what he made it though. I was like, incredible, and the guy lost his leg from a drug addict, from fentanyl. Was what happened. And then he basically hit rock bottom, and now he's here doing this. He's doing great. And I was like, see? That's what's like this guy would have been written off by society. And he was one of those people, and now he's here. Now he's helping other people. Like, that's the value in this. And camaraderie and having and like-minded people, because especially if you're white and a male, you're not moving into a future that is appreciative and supportive of you systemically, in education, in the workforce, in the media, anywhere. And life is hard, and it's a team sport, and I'm a fairly robust character, I think, from my own, from jail and the military and so on, and it's not easy for me. So I would not want to be someone with no experience, with no friends and brotherhood and nothing, just to go out there into that circus and expect to do very well. So do you want to be alone? If you're somebody who sees what's going on and are noticing of any, well, we're the guys that, that's it. We're it. There's nothing else. There's no other game in town. And I don't think there's going to be, because people are afraid to do it because they know what happens. And as you see, you'll get attacked, you'll be doxxed, there'll be all these things, which is, why the guys, we get that a lot. Like, with the masks, Antifa. And it's like, no, it's because people will firebomb your home on Christmas Eve with your pregnant wife and stuff inside, like happened to a fellow there in Australia. And there's one of our guys in Montreal now who's being stalked and harassed and threatened daily. Basically, they put flyers up around where he lives saying he's a Nazi. We got to deal with him and all. And like, this is crazy. If I did this to anyone, I would be in jail.
Yeah, the end of the world.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there's a reason, it's to protect people in the organization. And like, the Patriot Front guys do the same thing. If you have something to say to them, if you want to ask questions, then you talk to me or they're the president and the leader and the spokesman. There's no need to talk to anyone else because I'm the one talking for the rest of us. So if that needs to be done, then that needs to be done. But there's no reason to expose people to that. Threats and doxing, intimidate. And if they can't get you, they'll go after your wife, your children, any soft spot they can find to cause you misery and grief. They will do it. They have no scruples. They're not above doing anything. I've seen it all and I've experienced it all. They sent people to my house. They've doxed my children. Like, they do not care. So I would not subject anybody to that. I wouldn't recommend doing it. Because it just gives them options and gives them ways to hurt people. And conversely, not knowing who anybody is also causes them a lot of concern. Is it your doctor? Is it your local fire chief? Is it your school principal? Don't know. Is it the guy checking your bags at the airport? Don't know. It could be anybody.
Yeah, we are everywhere, and I hope they keep that in mind. And there's a lot more of us than I think they understand.
I think I downloaded that from Fight Club back in the day when I watched that. While you sleep, I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Write that one down. Yeah.
I think that one-shotted my entire generation. It definitely got me. So
yeah, it was a great. I might go back and watch it. It's been a long time, but I used to watch that. That was one of the movies I would take on dates when I was dating chicks back in the day. First, couple of times, like, you want to watch a movie? Like, sure. Have you ever seen Fight Club? I'm like, no. I'm like, all right, let's see. See what you think of this.
It's a psychological test for them, like how they react.
Nice, tell you nice baseline. Like, so what do you think about blowing up all the bank? I like it. It was romantic. I'm like, great. We're gonna get along fine. You move to other things later.
Right.
Mustache themed videos come later.
We could definitely go back and forth. Like, this is a series of movies in this order to get them where you need to.
Your homework. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, what have you faced from the system in terms of the government itself? Well, I mean, obviously, I know what you dealt with during COVID and everything else, but in terms of with the organization, because obviously the government is not happy. Obviously, Canada doesn't even have the protections that Americans do with the First Amendment and things like that. I imagine you come under a lot of pressure from the state, not just the Antifa. And of course, it goes without saying that when the Antifa are doing all these threats, the government doesn't do anything to stop them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, me personally, they were pretty heavy-handed initially. I had 5 criminal cases, 23 charges in 3 provinces simultaneously. They tried to bury me for like 15 years and all this crap. So I was fortunate to escape that. I was resourceful enough and had good friends and a good legal team and all that. So they kind of just were like, we'll just bury this guy. What's he going to do? I've been surprised. So that actually helps now because you're going to be making a case for political persecution. You're going to come after me again. Like, we already have this history of like you trying to, like, they were humiliated in all these cases. It wasn't like it went to trial and barely, none of them even went to trial because they got, here's our defense submissions. And they're like, okay, never mind, never mind. So they don't, and we can bring all that back up, and we had the assistant deputy commissioner of the RCMP personally asking why I wasn't in jail. Like, why are you, that would be like the second in command of the FBI in the United States being like, why isn't he in jail yet? Like, excuse me, that is highly I have the emails and I published them, and media's just, I didn't see any of that. So I mean, we'll see. There's been kind of a stand since all that's been resolved. I haven't had
It
any.
was in 2024, right? They cleared you of everything.
Yeah, I think that was the last one was off the books then. I personally haven't had any issues with that. The club though is they're very aggressive with like passive surveillance and like infiltration attempts and these kinds of things. We have things in place to mitigate that to a large degree, like NDAs and the vetting process and all this kind of stuff. But it's funny that people they go on, oh, they're collecting information, I'm not signing this. It says basically it's a very industry standard non-disclosure agreement. Like if you leave or you quit or you're kicked out or whatever, just don't talk about anything that went on, who's in the club, what they're doing. Like you just don't say anything. And that's it. If you do, we're going to destroy you. We're going to sue you for everything. And you're going to you agree to pay all of our costs, whether we win or not, on top of whatever it is. So it's like, promise to not screw us over. And there's no way. So why would you not sign that? What kind of man are you that you can't, I don't know if I can commit to that. You don't, you want to join, but you can't be sure you may not screw us over later intentionally. Anyway. But it also prevents a lot of people. Like, how are you going to do your thing? You're going to infiltrate and then report. Well, you can't. You have to sign this legal document. So, that shuts a lot of them down there. There's probably some obscure law or technicality somewhere for like law enforcement or something to get around that, and I'm sure they could fight it. But nothing that we're doing is illegal either, and it's strictly enforced because it's not that like pussies. Like no. If I speed in my car, they will not give me a speeding ticket like they would anyone else. They go, no, you were stunt driving. We're seizing your vehicle and you've endangered lives and all the, like, they'll just blow it out of. So any minor infraction can be exploded and ballooned into, like, look what they did with J6 with people. They're putting people in prison, weren't even there. Like you can't even have a text message. So just, militantly enforced, like strictly enforced, law abiding, behavior for that as a strategy, just for practical reasons. And just other things like we don't talk about firearms. Like it just isn't, because in Canada, if you post a picture or talking about guns, it's the same as if the United States, you're talking about bombs. Just instantly, everything is looking at you. They have they'll raid your house. They raided my house. Everything I had was legal, but they're like, whoa, he had a gun. So like, I was following the rules and I had everything returned to me. I was cleared of all the charges eventually, but for 2 years they said, basically he's a terrorist. So it's just, there's no, we're not going to gain anything from this kind of, are you going to go out and be the new IRA and wage some kind of civil war or whatever? You're not actually intending to do that right now. Then why are you doing this? You're just inviting problems for yourself.
Yeah, why talk about it? Right.
Yeah, you're not going to gain anything out of this. So there's just no reason to. So again, you just try to do everything above board, and it's a registered corporation. Like we're doing everything as properly as it can be. And so we've been over 2 years now operating without issue. There's not been a single arrest. Nobody has been nothing. We people knock on doors, and the security state will show up and seize us and go, you got to talk to us about this or that, and they go, no, I don't, and they close the door or they don't answer at all, and that's that, and they move on. But they're largely politically motivated. It's not necessarily because I think they would know better than anyone, the police and the state, like what's really going on, because they're being told to monitor us every day, all the time, and they're coming up with nothing. It's been, for me, they've been investigating, following me for like 7 or 8 years now. Oh my God, sorry. God, I hate that. Always happens. Telegram. Every time I'm doing something.
I know. It's always on the computer itself. There's nothing you can do to prevent it.
I thought about it earlier. I was like, I should close that, and I didn't, and this happened. But, what was I saying?
About how they're going after you for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, and they found nothing. They've had like 7 or 8 of my phones now, because I had to keep getting a new one. Every time you get arrested, you got to get another phone because they take yours. You don't get it back for years if you're lucky. Computers they've seized. Like if there was anything to
give it back, right? Here's your 5-year-old cell phone. Like,
yeah,
thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, they didn't. I had to sue to get the contents of some of my stuff back from Ontario. They wouldn't return it. They said, "Oh, we destroyed it." I'm like, "You did?" They're like, "Yep, sorry." I'm like, "Okay, give me all the data back then." And they're like, "Oh." I'm like, well, surely you backed it up somewhere. Like, I didn't believe them. I did eventually get some stuff back, and they had to pay me, $1,000 or something. But yeah, so but there's nothing to find, obviously, because like, what are they sitting on? Some kind of, if they had, they would have used it, because they've used everything under the sun to try to, attack me, make me look bad. And they're doing the same thing with the club and stuff too. So it's like, they can't, they can. I'm not saying they can't. They can invent things, and just, people worry about that. Well, what if they false flag this or that? Well, to me, that's like saying, what if we go into the ring and fight, what if I get my nose broken? That could happen. What if I break my head? That could happen. That's not a reason not to fight, though. Like they could try that, but then also I'm not very confident in their capability. They're very, I've seen what they're, up to, and they're not, professionals that impress me. So to pull off, so you're going to stage a crime, blame other people who weren't there and weren't involved in this day and age with the master. Okay, where's the phone metadata? Where's the video surveillance? Where's the text message? Where you have to fabricate all of this and make no mistakes that anyone will ever uncover and go, oh, you made all of this up. The risk to reward is enormous. Like you're right. Yeah. So it's we would have to be poised to be taking over the country for them to even consider doing so. Like in the 70s and the 80s, when Pierre Trudeau was prime minister, they had in Quebec, the FLQ was, terrorists, and they were, kidnapping people and stuff and being like, opposing Ottawa. And the RCMP, some officers were caught, they blew themselves up pretending to be the FLQ planting bombs and had accidentally blown themselves up. And we're like, that wasn't the FLQ, that was the RCMP doing that. But that was in the 70s. So you can imagine trying to get away with that now. Today, like, oh, I'm just planting a bomb. Well, you're on live stream from like 7 different cameras right now, and like I don't, I'd be skeptical. So I'm not saying they can't and would never try something like that. That's something people worry about. But again, just think about it. Like, if you want to try that, I mean, that would suck for us initially, but long run, I mean, they did try something kind of like that with me, but it didn't. It blew up in their face. So again, being worried about what could or yeah, like being worried.
They like tried to plant a bomb. What did they try to? I mean, maybe you can't get into it, but they
just the charges. They were like, oh, you assaulted this person and you harassed it, and these are illegal and that. And it's like none of that happened though. And they're like, yeah, prove it. I'm like, okay, here. And they're like, crap. It was like, what? But that took 2 or 3 years of my life, and it cost like $300,000 and wiped me out and cleaned out my life savings. And I had to spend time in jail for months and murder attempts and all that. So, the process is the punishment, as they say. Right. But again, that's, being worried about what the enemy could do to you, and as a result of fighting them, that's just things you worry about on your way to the battlefield or whatever. Coming back, like, it doesn't mean you don't. It's just, hopefully this doesn't happen, or that you think about it and go, well, if this happens, I'll do this or that. But at the end of the day, like, are you getting in or are you not? Because again, the two guys are just going to stand there and argue at the foot of the mountain, or like, oh, I want to build this castle. Like, are you doing it or not? At some point, you have to do it or not, and So it's we're looking for guys that are have a little bit of stones to do that, and it's they're not expected to stand up front and speak for the club. We have a few public facing guys that are trusted and to do that, but it's not like we're not asking anybody to do anything crazy or illegal or anything like that. So
right. And, it is a big thing because people always get into hypotheticals and whatever else. It's like, look, if you talk over the hypotheticals, eventually you can just impose a state of paralysis on yourself. It's like, oh, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. It's like, yeah, but I mean, if that's true, why do anything? I mean, that's sort of the thing. If everything is doomed to failure, and if all you've got are lots of ideas about how this won't work, then just, I don't know, watch sports or something. You'll be happier. Yeah. I mean, like, what's the point of doing anything?
Yeah, it's just fear. It's fear talking. And I went through this with the military again. Like I always come back to that, but it's, I don't want to be those, the military, this, that. That's all I did with my life. That's my life experience. So I don't know what else to tell you. That's just where I learned things. And so I started initially in the Army Reserve. So like the National Guard in the US. So it's kind of very volunteer. You're not forced to do a lot of things. They can offer you like, hey, we're going to, we need guys for this or that to go to Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever. And people, I guess I'll go, I'll do that. So in that environment initially, before that was available, there was a lot of guys who thought quite a lot of themselves and, were basically in their mind were some kind of commando. And then, surprise, we need 80 guys to backfill a regular force regiment for a combat deployment in Kandahar in 2007. Who's going? And I was like, I'll go, me and a couple. And then all of those guys that you would have expected were all of a sudden, my cat's having kittens that day, and I got to deliver. Like, what happened? And they would go back, well, this could happen. They all had excuses and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, it came down to fear. They were intimidated by the situation, and it was too big for them. And rather than admit that and go, yeah, I'm not, it takes a bigger man to do that than it does to lie and make excuses. And those same people years later showed up on the teardown, like when Canada left in 2012, I think it was around the end of 2012, we were like, well, a bunch of our guys are dead and we wasted a ton of money and time to leave for no reason and call it a day, I guess. All those same guys all of a sudden showed up for that because there was no threat. It was just go to Kabul, pack some boxes, stand around, eat some cheese sandwiches, and you get the same medal as I have, as everybody else had. If you were an 18-year-old, had your legs blown off in the Panjwai Valley, or you stood around getting fat in Kabul, you get the same medal anyway. So they come home and they take their pictures. Oh, Afghanistan. Were you though? You know, you had an opportunity and you didn't want to. But they're like these people who, in the old days, in the swords and shields days, they hide when the battle starts and under some dead bodies or in the bushes or something. And then when their side is winning or is about to win, they get up and they put their sword in a dead guy already. And they go, "Hey, we did it, guys. We won." They go, "What do you mean we? You weren't there. You weren't here. You were doing this." You want people to think that of you, and you want to think that of you, but you don't want to do what's required to be that person. It's as simple as that. And it's just the only thing in the way is fear. And, maybe some personal development, joining a boxing club or something, get some self-esteem and some self-confidence, and maybe you can tackle more scary things in life. But yeah, there's an epidemic of that right now. And a lot of people just stuck on the internet in their existential crisis rectangles.
Right. Like, we're all going to die someday. So like, there's no choice you can make where you get to remain perfectly safe forever. Like, it's going to happen one way or the other. So you might as well do what you want to do. One thing that we'll say, I mean, talking about the nature of the system and everything else, you brought up a really interesting point when you brought up the Alberta independence referendum. And of course, Quebec is always on the brink of, bolting if political winds shift one way or the other. On the one hand, it seems like the Canadian political situation is remarkably stable. Like you say, everybody's kind of dispirited, and dispirited people generally don't start revolutions. I mean, at least not in the short term. They don't vote for even an insurgent political party. Yeah. But on the other hand, the country actually does seem to be falling apart, not just in the sense of things are getting worse, but important parts of the country may break away very, very soon. And I'm sure the fact that we down here keep talking about invading you guys probably doesn't help. That's a separate thing. I mean, could you see it happening? Because it's maybe the one country where it's not crazy to talk about a major geopolitical change happening within the next decade. It's not the craziest thing in the world to say Quebec leaves or Alberta leaves. And if one leaves, the other's probably going to leave. And if either of them leave, then the whole thing's going to fall apart, because then what's keeping everything together? Yeah.
So there are, I think it's a minority of people in the separatist movement that actually want and believe that's the way to go.
You think it's just a negotiation tactic?
The majority of them are we could, they're threatening it as as a means to try to get a better deal and get a better position, which is, understandable. Of course, they're going to do that. But at the same time, it does seem stable. But if you're the person who's, they've got a drinking problem and they're doing drugs, they don't seem to care if they live or die. Those people are also prone to just snap at times without warning, because they've been running on this baseline of misery for so long that you don't know, everything seemed fine. Yes, they were miserable and suffering tremendously for a long time. And then one day, for no reason, out of the blue, they freaked out like the convoy. There was no indication that was about to happen. And that just happened out of nowhere, because a few people were like, "The hell with it. Let's just drive our trucks to Ottawa." And everybody else was like, sure. And within a week, I remember I did a video on that, kind of when it first popped off, and it had, tons of views, and they associated me as leadership of it. I was just commenting on it. I had nothing to do with it, but I was I'm going to go check and see this happen. But everybody making content about it just went, it just became a self-assembling mechanism. And there was no conspiracy. It was just an organic revolt, more than anything. And they were like, "I don't understand." First, the government said it's not happening. That's just fake news. Then they said, because it was live streamed, as they're coming closer, it took a week to get everybody there. And then they said, "Okay, well, there are some people, but it's not very many. And they're only going to be here for a day, and then they're going to leave." And then they said, "Well, maybe they just kept," and then it was an emergency. We need to suspend civil liberties and enact war measures provisions to violently put down the protest and imprison people politically and seize their bank accounts and beat them with guns and trample them with horses and all these other things. So they went full Joseph Stalin very quickly. Russia's never done anything like this, to my understanding. That should have and did shatter the idea of what Canada was for a lot of people, and I think it was very necessary.
Yeah, definitely.
I was already. Yeah, I was already sure that's who they were, but a lot of people would not. I was telling them too because I had contacts in the police and other places, being like, "Dude, the public order unit, it's called the POU, like the riot squad for the RCMP, is stationed out in British Columbia." And they said, "Because he's like, I work near there, and I just drove by there, and they're all gone." Like there's nobody there. I was like, oh shit. It's like, where do you think they are? They're on the way here. And I said, listen, they're bringing in the heavies now, and they're going to beat everybody up. That's literally what these guys are trained to do. And they said, no, that's never going to, Canada would never do that. And they're out there handing them flowers and stuff on the line. And I'm just like, they're wargaming how to do this right now. And in probably for 3 or 4 days, they're going to, and they did. And they just went at it, and they first knocked down the protest in Alberta or Windsor, then Alberta, like just the satellite ones first, then you focus in on the main effort. They just kettled everybody in and just worked them out all day, and that was that. And they were in shock. Like people were like screaming at them in tears, and I was like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand. And they like, don't care, bang. And they got paid overtime, and they were in their group chats all celebrating it. Somebody leaked them to me. I published them on the internet, and there was never an apology about nothing. It's just their face for a minute. They actually had their real face out there for a minute, and a lot of people can't unsee that. And the state and the opposition and all the people in Ottawa and the politicians are pretending that never happened. It's like if you have an abusive partner or something, or husband, or you catch your wife cheating on you or something. Like you saw this happen, or you experienced this, and then the next day is just like, hey, what do you want for breakfast? You're like, I can't. I cannot just, this is not going to work. We can't just go back to the way it was, because things have fundamentally changed forever. And you seem to just be pretending that didn't happen. So that's why everything will probably explode here at some point and devolve. And, the Americans have said this all the time, and these kinds of things. We should just take over Canada. Yeah. But I mean, again, I'm a Canadian nationalist. Obviously, I'm going to play for my team, and I want what's best for them, and all of that kind of stuff. But you got to be honest, right? If I was American, would I tolerate or be okay with essentially a failed state north of the border that has become a Chinese, colony? That's, a safe haven for international drug cartels and trafficking. Like, we are wide open. Vancouver's the methamphetamine capital of the world. Trump in his negotiations Alberta had to tear down like a $1 billion fentanyl lab in Alberta, which was, affecting America, which is like we didn't do that. Trump did. Like, so how long do you, this isn't the other side of the world. This is right next door. And it's like, in my opinion, I think they've actually shown a fair amount of restraint with how out of control this place has been. And Canada's I don't know what the situation is now, but was fairly tied in with the U.S. intelligence, sharing network and stuff back and forth.
Yeah, the Five Eyes thing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all the Anglosphere countries. Yeah, and they say there's professionals here that I've talked to that were in military intelligence and stuff, and they say it's difficult to know where the Canadian state ends and the Chinese state begins. So, how do you expect them to tolerate? Like, if they sent the Marines here one day, I would be like, I'm not surprised. Like, it's like if you're having a really loud party and then the police show up, you're like, yeah. We kind of knew this would happen, right? It's not shocking that the police are here, right? So it wouldn't shock me if America was like, we're gonna just take over. Like, I can see. I mean, that probably wouldn't happen like that. I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, maybe negotiating or whatnot. But I also think it's possible that the people in there now in Ottawa are like intentionally destroying the country and trying to bring it to that point. So there's an excuse to do that. Like, there's an understanding or something, because they're just bankrupting the country. They're doing everything they could do to destroy it as fast as possible and bring it to a crisis. So I don't know if I was trying to bring the country to a crisis. I don't know what I could be doing that they're not doing that could make it happen any faster than it could, without just killing people, without just sending people to murder people in the streets. Like, I don't know what else could be done. Yeah, when you think about the security threats to Canada, because people for so long, and everybody, I think, operates off the premise that like demographics were what they were 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So everybody in America is still operating off like the Canadian Bacon movie script, where like there's no crime, everything's safe, the streets are clean and everything else. Like, there are no minorities. It's like, have you been up there? Have you seen like what's going on there? And even with Canada, what's amazing, I think, is the way India and this like weird Khalistan like separatist thing, and you have like all these like wars of assassination and like political maneuver and all these like crazy extremist movements like kind of fighting a sort of proxy war within Canada itself, and all these weird like third world ethnic rivalries manifesting themselves in Canadian politics. And it's like, is this the future of the whole country? And it ultimately, is this the future of the West? Because it's not like it's not happening in America. It's just not quite as accelerated here, and there's a lot more people, so it's a lot more spread out.
Yeah, that certainly is the future if we don't do something about it. Like, we've essentially, the Canadian people have been shoved aside, and our home is now a battle space, an economic zone, and a squatter's hub for whoever wants to, and we're not allowed to say or do it. So again, like, this won't be tolerated forever. People have, there is a limit to what they'll put up with when it comes to people will endure pain and misery if they believe it's necessary. If there's no way, like, it was an act of God, it was a tornado, whatever, we're just poor because the economy, like, it's out of our hands, what can you do? But disrespect and indignity and being like, people are doing this to you on purpose because they hate you is a different situation, and that's not something people will put up with forever, because it's infuriating, And again, read European history. Like, this doesn't go over well for very long with people. Like, it might take 100 years sometimes, but inevitably, kaboom! Because it's like life. Living as a slave is more painful than whatever they might do to me fighting them. This is less pain. It would feel better to do that than to live another day like this. And that's, I don't see, that's where we're going. That's the situation they've had us set up for. And like, globally, I think in the next, my personal guess is 2 to 3 years, 2 to 5 years, but like 3-year window, because it's kind of we're in like rebuilding years right now, like a sports team, right. Kind of, right? But a lot of the, like, every kind of generation and wave does what it does, and then there's a kind of a lull, and then the new blood, the new energy comes in, and we go again. And that's kind of where we're in an in-between stage right now, is where you've got 15 to 18, 14 to 18-year-old people, kids, boys especially, like you said, the ones who are politically active are way more extreme. Then you've got Hassan Piker being openly communist, saying America deserved 9/11 and we're here to destroy all the white people and so on. Like, we were saying that's what he was 5 years ago, and now he's just openly admitting, yeah, that is what I am, what I've always been. Okay, well, that's also true of the people on the other side, and they're 14 now, and in 4 years they'll be 18, and they're 17 now, and in 3 years they'll be 20, 21, and they're in the workforce, or they can't get in the workforce, or they're old enough to be engaged, and it's in their interests to care, because they're with the most to lose. If somebody's 50, 60, how much you're halfway through your life already. These guys have everything in front of them and nothing to, it's in their interest to act on this as quickly as possible, because if it can be fixed, they have all of that time down the road, their whole life, to benefit from it. And the young people have the most to lose, really. So, and they've got, the most to lose and nothing to lose at the same time. That energy has got to go somewhere, and you've got nothing to offer them except go die for Israel, which is not something, it's not cool anymore, which is great since October 7th. It's a side effect of teaching people for forever, like, yeah, mass murder and killing innocent people is very bad. Like, yes. And then you do it on a live stream for the whole planet to watch, and then you're confused as to why nobody likes you anymore. I don't know. I don't know how to fix that disconnect. That's their problem. But in about 3 years, I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see a lot of these, because these guys, the TikTok generation, like, they're on social media doing, passing edits around of, color restored footage of certain figures in history and so on. And this was not happening when I was that age. Like, the average, activated 17-year-old today is way further ahead at that point. So, they're going to not want to be kids forever. And then what happens? And what is their solution? What is the state's solution? They don't have a solution. Their solution is shut up or we'll put you in jail. Like, well,
can't put us all in jail.
You're thinking, do we have to fight you? And your response is yes. It's like, well, then it wouldn't even be the people thing. The same in Ireland. I was talking about this the other night as well. Like, it's not, they'll say, well, they're terrorists, or they're this, or they're that. They're not the ones that initiated this. What happened was, you've got foreign interests hurting your home interests, your people, whatever, and everyone goes, oh no, I'm bleeding, and then they look to the state and the media, and they go, and they just block you and help the people that are hurting you. That right there, when you chose their side over ours, that was the decision point that cemented where this was going to go. So when the home domestic population later revolts or does a convoy or does whatever they're going to do, you can't go, oh, look what they've done. No, look what you did this 5, 10, 20 years ago. You guaranteed that this would happen when you made those decisions. This was a foregone conclusion. You knocked the dominoes over, and you're blaming them now for falling down.
Right. They brought this on themselves. Last question, because I think this gets to the core of it, and this is something that I think we're all asking ourselves in all of our countries. I mean, how do you define Canadian identity in terms of, is it just purely a question of white? Because there's the obvious question, and I say this as somebody who works for American Renaissance, and if somebody was like, are you a white nationalist? I'd be like, yeah. So, yeah, I'll just own that. But if you... Right. If in terms of all Canadians are white, but not all white people are Canadian, right? I mean, there has to be like a certain, if we're saying that Canada deserves to exist as a sovereign state, it has its own unique identity, it has its own historical path, it has a great tradition, which unfortunately has been wiped out over the last few decades. But I mean, you guys were like the stormtroopers of the Anglosphere during most of the conflicts of the last century and beat us twice, although we don't like to talk about it. I mean,
it's like it's like great fighters in history.
Third time now, we'll see.
Yeah, the trilogy, the good guys always win in the trilogy. There's great fighters in history who have like a record of like 60-2 or something like that, but there'll be one that they did lose or almost lost to like somebody no one's ever heard of. And it's like, yeah, that guy was that Canada. It's like, who's that? It's like, George Chuvalo was one of these guys. He's a Canadian fighter who fought Muhammad Ali and a bunch of others. And he never really became like a world champion, but he was right there. And it was just, he's nobody you think about. And but he's like, oh, Muhammad Ali, they go in there and fight this guy, and they'd come out like half dead, like that guy's insane. He's crazy. Like that's probably that. So the identity question it answers that. It was an empty, open continent. You've had the First Nations people here. We have a bit of a different history with them than the Americans do. And so we had the British colonists and the French colonists primarily. So you've got Ireland, Scotland, England, and France, which is, you can't really see it as much, but that's part of the club logo. Right. There's the Canadian shield. That was on the original flag, and that's where we came from. That's literally our family story right there. Those people came here separately, intermingled, intermarried, had children with each other in a new country, in a new place, like left the old world and grievances behind and said, and like the French and English working together was like, what are you talking about? And the Irish and the Scottish, and we're all gonna just, like it had never been done. So when you think about all those people individually, Scotland, Ireland, England, France, and it's like a lot of guillotines and swords and craziness, and these are people that like to. So I'm not surprised that they're very polite and happy until they're not, and then they're committing war crimes and doing redefining brutality all of a sudden. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not. If you know who they are, like that's not surprising when you put it that way. But that's where it came from. That's why we're not English or Scottish or French because we're Canadian. It's not the same. We're a mixture of all of those people. And I think that's great. That's fantastic. I like having a little bit of a connection to all of these different peoples because they're all special and unique and wonderful in their own way, and they all have their own incredible histories and stories and good parts and bad parts. But it's who you are. It's who we are. It's your family, and you're allowed to love and appreciate your own family. So that was the initial genesis of the country, and then later on you have immigrants from Northern Europe and then Southern Europe and around. So it is mostly a European diaspora, but I think still to this day it's like 60 or 70% of the Canadians, the white Canadians, their lineage is traced to that original English, Scottish, French, or Irish ancestry. So it's very much still there. And then I like to say, so for example, we don't have a very big African population. We have a much bigger one now than we used to. But in 1965, I think we had 60,000 in the whole country. That's it. So we had Halifax at a small percentage, and then there's some in Toronto, and there's some in Montreal. And they've been coming and going since like the Civil War in the United States, sort of thing. And you've got the First Nations who don't consider themselves Canadian. If you ask them, they say, "I'm Cree, I'm Cherokee, I'm Dene, I'm all these different things, Blackfoot, whatever." Okay, fine. And then there's some others who do because they've also it's a little more complicated, but they're sort of. I consider every Canadian is a citizen, but not every citizen is Canadian. That's why there's two different words. When you ask a lot of these people who don't know any better, they say, "Oh, they're Canadian. They're a Canadian citizen." I'm like, "What's the difference between those two words?" And they just They have no idea. They think it's the same. Like, well, why is there two words for the same thing then? There's not. They're two different things. Every Canadian is a citizen. Not every citizen is Canadian. That's why it's Canadian citizen, hyphen. The hyphen means you're adopted, basically. So I say it to people like, listen, like a Japanese kid, I'm not your real dad. You're not my real son. Obviously, everybody knows that. But you're adopted. We're going to do our best to work this out and take care. And for all intents and purposes, we're just going to treat you the same. And, that's going to be that. But there's a differentiation there because it's obvious, it's disrespectful to both people to insist that presume they're both the same thing. Like, we're not, though. That's insulting to both sides. So you've got that, a small percentage of that. And I grew up, it was like 97% ethnic Canadian when I was a kid in the late 80s. 96, 97%. And the other 3-4% was like a small amount of Africans and the First Nations. And that was it. So that was Canada and is Canada. That's 97% us plus a tiny amount of these people and, much smaller. Like, well, my grandfather from Iran. I'm like, I'm sure there are, very small amounts of people. And nobody's saying that they didn't help and didn't contribute or whatever. But that doesn't change the face and character and overall overwhelming composition of the country, its character and its culture to that, because you happen to find a picture of one Indian guy in 1917. That doesn't mean India is, that's crazy, obviously. And they know that. They just insist that it's, terrorism.
Yeah, it's always in bad faith and all this kind of stuff.
It's like that millennial woes quote. It's like, it's impossible to argue. What does it go? You can't argue with
it's amazing how much leftist discourse is just pretending not to understand things, thus making discourse impossible.
You can explain this to them and everyone's like, oh, that makes sense. They're like, oh, you're insane. I'm like, okay. You're just in denial of reality right now. But, and that's all it is. It's not like,
is that the end of it then, to get it back to what it was?
Well, at least preserve its character.
That's what you can, yeah.
At minimum, because then it's not Canada anymore. It's something else. And that's not, who wants their home to change into something, belong to somebody else? It's like somebody moving into your house, eating your food, sleeping with your wife, beating your children, taking all your family photos off the wall, putting up theirs, and then tell you to go live in the garage, and then eventually kick you out of the house. And it's like, I don't think I'm good. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to do that. And they go, well, that's because you're a terrorist. Okay. No, like at that point, obviously these are people not interested in your well-being and arguing in good faith. They just want to hurt you and they're on the other team. So you go, okay, all right, we're fighting then. All right, cool. They're the enemy. So you disregard what they say because they're not here to converse with you or work with you. They will just want to hurt you. And there's nothing you can do about that except, place them accordingly in the enemy pile and move on. But, ideally, it's like, I wouldn't want, if you're Japanese, do you want Japan to turn into Nigeria? Like put 100 million Nigerians, Japan. Well, then it's not Japan anymore.
Well, I'll have to ask Jared Taylor. I mean, he was born in Japan, and if he's born there, he's actually Japanese. Yeah. So I'll find out.
There's a great video of I don't know who it is. It wasn't Jared Taylor. He's a much younger guy, but he's born and raised in Japan. I think he's like British, white guy, and he speaks Japanese and all of these things, but he's very obviously not Japanese. And he'll tell you that, and they'll tell you that, but he lives there fine. Like, they tolerate it. It's like nobody's, and that's the other thing, especially about Canadians, because we've, tried to work with the First Nations and have like a coexistence and kind of thing. People are content to put nobody minds. Like, if it's a 97% majority, like it was, people aren't freaking out about, one family from India moving into a city. That's not.
Once it becomes like a situation, now it becomes an existential conflict. I mean, this is one of the weird things. I mean, kind of the last point, but it's an important one, which is that as a society becomes more diverse, there's sort of like a polite lie that I think we all were willing to tolerate. Like, I was talking about this.
I know where you're going with this. It's prison rules.
Like, people in Britain, that too. But there were people in Britain who would say, like, look, you had a few blacks in Britain in like the 90s or something like that. And it's like, okay, he's on the soccer team. He's an entertainer or whatever. We call him British. We all know he's not British, but it's not a big deal.
British citizen. Yeah.
Right. But now when you're at a point where everybody, the group dynamics have shifted because the numbers have shifted, and everybody basically has to be loyal to their ethnic team because that's how politics works at this point. Because people are voting as blocks, they're organizing as blocks. I certainly don't have to tell you that's how the Indians are operating up in Canada and everything else. Now you have to make these kinds of distinctions. Now you actually can't engage in the polite lie anymore, where it's like, okay, you live here and maybe I'm not going to attack you or hate you or something, and maybe we can even be friends, but you're not us. You're just not. And it doesn't matter like what arguments people make or whatever, you're never going to be us.
Yeah.
And that's, if you take that to a long enough conclusion, like Proximity plus diversity equals conflict. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what has to happen.
And scarcity of resources. It's the prison analogy. Like
Maybe
everybody's
the big thing that's coming. Yeah.
There's no multicultural understanding, hand-holding, kumbaya stuff in jail and in prison. It's all very racially, because it's intense environments where there's conflict and risk and scarcity of resources. All that people always 100% of the time default back to whatever their tribe is. That's just don't get mad at me. I just work here. I didn't build this place. That's just how it works. If you don't believe me, go test your luck. Go check yourself into a jail in
giant prison that we're all stuck in. Right?
Go see how that works. And it's fine. I don't know if there's ever been a country on earth that's like 10 million people, every single one of them are that ethnic. Like there's always going to be some, but they'll tolerate. There's people that come and go for any number of bizarre. Life is crazy. People get shipwrecked and planes crash and wars and all kinds of things happen. But if it's not a cohesive majority, there's no stability. You can't have a country of 8 different equally powerful ethnicities and tribes and groups who are always going to want the best for their own side first over everybody else. It's just normal. So you're guaranteeing conflict when you do this. So the act of, and everybody knows this is what the Greeks and the Romans would do this. If they wanted to destroy people, they would just flood them with foreigners and be like, here you go, and it would destroy their civilization because it's known that's what it does. So this isn't an exercise in empathy and the people, again, we know who they are, an identifiable group in Canada. We can't talk about them, but they know that's what this does. It's intentional. It's intentional destruction. It takes longer, but it is permanent. A war, you can come in and bomb people and kill people, but it's very hard to just kill everybody. It's messy. It takes a long time, but this can take longer, but if it succeeds, it's forever. That's because they're never coming back after that. So you need to maintain, if you want peace and stability and security and just regular order, which is necessary to build anything or get anything done. When was the last great project America has done? Built anything, gone to, or anyone? We don't have time because we're busy. Our cities are on fire. Everybody's killing each other. Everybody's fighting over.
We've got to babysit the entire third world. I mean, that's what I always say. It's like, we gave up the star. Every time you see like some black riot in some city where they're all shooting each other and destroying stores and burning everything down. I mean, you got to remind yourself, we gave up the stars for this. We could have done anything, but we decided to give $2 trillion to the most dysgenic population in the world, for no reason.
And now you don't have this cohesive, super majority of people that are all understandably on the same team. So we can't have order and stability. So that means we can't do progress. We can't fix things. We can't get anything under control because it's like you're trying to put out fires but you won't do anything with the arsonists. This is just going to go around and around and around and around until you run out of resources and become exhausted, and eventually the fire overwhelms you. So it's just logic. It has nothing it's hatred. It actually has nothing to do with that at all. This is purely logic. This is just 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 has to equal 4, and that's just how it works. So there's guys on our side that understand that and reluctant. Like I was one of them. I didn't want to believe that everything I'd grown up to was taught was a lie, and because I grew up with all the same liberal stuff that they teach anybody. And my experience with blacks was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Because Canada was 97% white, and we didn't have any. My experience with Indians was Apu from The Simpsons. We didn't have any, and it turns out life was different than that, and you have to swallow it and go, shit, well, look at the numbers, look at what's happening, look at what they're saying about us and what they're doing. And where does this go if this doesn't challenge, this isn't fought? What happens, not just in general, what happens to me personally, and more so my children and theirs? Like, do they have a future? Do they have anywhere to go? Because it's not like, well, we'll just leave. Go where? Go to Ireland, England, France, Spain, Germany?
Happening everywhere. Yeah, right.
There's nowhere to go. And the odds of that across the world, all of these countries, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Italy, like all these countries, different histories, different languages, different religions, and all like, you know what? We all agree on let's destroy ourselves all at once, all at the same time. That's suspicious, so everybody that always told me, or they try to fight, like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, this and that. I can see, I have my own eyes, and I remember this. I remember 9/11 when I was a kid, and I remember what I saw, and then I remember what they said, and I'm like, but that's not what happened. I just watched what happened, and now you're just lying. So it's just more of the same. And they're betting the farm on this, that they're going to be able to pull this off and without any consequences. And it's a pretty ballsy move, because you're betting that you can just take down the whole world without consequence. And if one country even gets free, that's curtains. And I said to I think another stream recently, but it's just everybody who's watching, because America is the main event, like it or not, people in Canada or anywhere else. That's the biggest, most powerful, still most influential. That's the European mega power of the one what's left. The Great Britain is not what it used to be at all. It's the United States. So if the U.S. doesn't, succeed and survive and pull itself out, like that's bad news for the entire world forever.
We're all very aware of that.
Yeah. So I said, like, the rest of us are just, if Americans are like, well, I wonder what the rest of the world thinks of us. We're all around our televisions going, oh,
please don't.
Oh God. Come on, please, God, don't smoke that crack pipe. Oh man, you're watching AOC make a presidential run. You're like, this can't happen, so
freezing your eggs for the entire world to see. This is what we got to. But I think you're right. And I think this is the critical thing, is that we are getting to a point where I think it's increasingly untenable. I think we're getting to a point where everybody sees what's going on. And I think that we're at a point where they can spread around the resources to kind of keep the peace and keep all the groups from just openly warring with each other, but they can only do that for so long. And there's a palpable sense that this cannot continue for much longer. And once you get a certain generational change, I think politics are going to get a lot more radical and a lot more existential. And it's going to happen a lot more quickly than people expect.
Yeah. The other thing that I forgot to mention earlier, about like 2 to 5 years, that's also, where are the boomers at? They're 65? 2 to 5 years, like they're out of the picture soon. So that whole element of that anchoring a lot of people, that's phasing out and that's coming in. And so very soon, definitely within the next 10 years, but I don't think we'll make it. I think it'll happen before then. There's going to be another, sort of higher intensity period that may go on for a long time. We've had, and that's just the way the world is. It's not like doom pilling or anything like that. We go through these cycles, and we've been relatively lucky since the end of the Second World War. Pigs have been fairly, not stable, but they've been, degrading and all that. But this isn't normal. Normally there's upheavals and much more frequently and often than there has been in the last 80 years. We're well overdue, and there's every sign in the world you can imagine that says that there's more coming very soon, definitely within our lifetime, I think in the next 5 years. And then it is what it is. And it's like, would you rather have been an onion farmer in the 1600s, or the most exciting thing that ever happened was a stray dog you've never seen before? And that could be your life also, so I think we will eventually come out on top, because necessity is the mother of invention. And the reason that we've been losing so far is the overwhelming majority of the people, our people, don't really understand what's happening. They don't even understand that they're under attack. So the enemy is at full power trying to kill us in our sleep, and we're still half awake, like, what are you doing? If, that eventually kicks on, which I think it will, just as a survival necessity. We don't seem to activate and go really hard until all the other options have been expended, all the other excuses have been pursued, all the other, there's nothing left except, matching shirts and drums time or something. And then all of the energy goes into that, and it's like a bomb goes off, and then how did this came out of nowhere? It never comes out of nowhere. You just, didn't know where to look. But I just recently talked to Jake Shields last week.
Then one day, for no reason at all, as they put it.
He asked me a similar thing. I said, because well, picture in my house. So we're in a big party in my house, my living room, and the living room is like the world or our civilization. And Jake Shields is there, and my friend Bob, just a fat, drunk guy, is going to have a fight with Jake Shields in my living room. There's no question over what the outcome of this fight is going to be, but a lot of stuff is going to get broken. They're both big fellas, and it's going to get, the TV's going to get smashed, the window's going to get put out, like it's going to be bad. There's probably going to be blood all over the carpets. It's going to be terrible, but he's not going to lose. It will be messy, and we'll be very angry about all the mess we'll have to clean up and fix later. But I really don't think, once this inevitably goes to its logical conclusion, it's like, they'll be like, what were you thinking? Why did you ever think this was a good idea to try doing this? So, or we lose and everybody dies, and the whole world goes to hell anyway. So they also die with us. So it's
an optimistic way to end it. But I do
we win either way.
The reason that this is going to happen is simply because we're due. And frankly, if you look at it, that's not a bad explanation. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it, man. Where can people find you, and how can they support you?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, jeremymackenzie.ca is my personal website. I've got links to my Substack and social media videos and things there. If you want to support me there, you can go to fymm.ca. It's just a very simple, payment processor, and that's primarily how I get by. And the club, if you're in Canada, if you're interested, or even if you're in Canada, and if something you're interested in, secondsons.org is our website. There's an application intake form there. We're gonna be revamping that soon to try to streamline this a little bit better. But that's where you go and you fill out the form, and it goes to our screening team, and they'll get back to you probably from a Proton mail address, and it will probably end up in a junk folder if you're using any of the legacy email programs. So keep an eye out for that. And it can take a few weeks or a couple months sometimes to get back to people because it's, like you said earlier, like the state media is our biggest advertiser. They'll go out and they'll publish stuff about us and say, oh, aren't they horrible and aren't they evil? And what they don't understand is like, this is a good thing, is because everyone hates them. Everyone hates the state media and doesn't like. So if the state media says, oh, I really don't like these people, what does that tell the public and the population? It legitimizes them as a threat or a concern to the people that they hate most of all. So thank you very much. And every time they do this, we get always a massive influx of interest and attention. So, excellent. Keep it up. Appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
All right, guys. I want everyone to check this out real quick. This is from Verizon. I'll just read this statement real quick. Vandals cut multiple fiber cables, causing mobile and internet disruptions in parts of Southern California. Repairs are underway, and we expect service to be restored in the next couple of hours. Law enforcement is engaged. We appreciate your patience, blah, 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 blah. So what's really happening here? They're stealing the copper. They're stealing the cables. And this is the sort of thing that's happening everywhere. There have been a lot of posts in recent days on X and on other places where people are saying, why is it that when you go to a CVS in New York or Philadelphia or something like that, everything is locked up? Why can't we do anything? Look, there is let's call it a law of the preservation of fences. I think Kevin Dolan, who's been on this program, talked about this before. You are going to have to build fences. You are going to have to fortify certain things. You are going to have armed guards in one way or another. You're going to have to use force in one way or another. The only question is whether you're going to have one big fence around your country to keep out the people you don't want, or you're going to have lots of little fences. And the problem with lots of little fences is it's way more inefficient and it's way more expensive. Now, in South Africa, it is taken perfectly for granted that the copper is always going to be stolen. What is one of the reasons they can't keep the power grid going? Because people keep stealing the stuff you need to make it to work and then selling it for scrap. Same thing happens with buildings in certain neighborhoods in the United States. People go in, they steal all the plumbing and all the copper from that. They sell it, causes hundreds of thousands more worth in damage than what they get from it. This is how a civilization dies. And this is also something when you look at something like shoplifting. It's not just that the prices go up. It's not just that you have to impose security costs. It's not just that the whole experience becomes way much more unpleasant. It's that eventually you can't do these kinds of things anymore because every one person that turns away from it, the marginal utility of the destruction is way more than whatever little gain somebody gets from shoplifting. This is how everything is driven down to the lowest common denominator. What is the solution to this kind of thing? Authoritarianism is a word. It's a loaded word. It's a negative word. And I'm not going to say, oh, we need authoritarianism, because it's like, okay, I mean, we're going to be the villains. We're going to be the bad guys. We're just going to own it. Yeah, there's a certain appeal to that. And I can even get away with that if I'm streaming online. But come on, if we're talking about like real political solutions, that's not how it works. But again, look at Bukele in El Salvador. If you have strong central leadership, law and order, punish the criminals, we are not going to tolerate this kind of thing. It does benefit everyone. And here's the key, and this is probably the most democratic and egalitarian thing that I'm ever going to say. It's actually not that many people who cause these problems. It's a vanishingly small minority. But in order to deal with that vanishingly small minority, you have to come up with a pretty politically incorrect approach, and you have to admit something that I don't think a lot of us want to admit. Sometimes mere life is not more valuable than property. Sometimes property is actually more valuable than life. Sometimes some life has a negative value. And sometimes these liabilities, these living liabilities, have to be prevented through force from ruining everything for the rest of us if we're going to live in anything other than a global slum. I'm Kevin DeAnna. We'll talk again real soon. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of Identity Politics. If you found this valuable and you want to see more of this kind of work, here's how you can help. First, follow the show and share it with people who need to hear it. We're on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, TikTok, and you can also grab the RSS feed. Sharing it is the fastest way for us to grow. Second, sign up for our email list so we can always stay in direct contact no matter what the platforms decide. And most importantly, if you believe in our mission and want to keep it going, please consider supporting us on Ko-Fi. You can donate once or subscribe at the bronze, silver, gold, or white level. Every contribution, big or small, helps keep Identity Politics independent and alive. All the links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. We'll see you next time.